good to hear. Thank you. Do we have, do you have printed agendas out here? Because just kind of let you know that our slideshow is not going to work. So I don't know. I can't. It's hotel Wi-Fi, which is the whole thing works off of Wi-Fi, not cable, and so hotel Wi-Fi makes it havoc. I've been here an hour and a half. I have a Chromebook, so it's just working off a browser. It shows me all the connection, but it always fails when I get there. That's what I'm looking for. Thanks. I mean, I have it. I have my presentation in front of me. I just can't show it to anybody. That's all right. Oh, okay. I'd like to test it. Turn it up, Francis. Listen to that. Test it. Test. Test. 1, 2. 1, 2. Can you hear me? You can hear me from my voice. Can you hear my mic? Is that up loud enough? Is that loud enough? Testing. Test. Test. That's better. Testing. That's better. Thank you. Help a little bit. All right, test. Good. Much better. Thank you. It's just not going to get anything up there. Oh, I guess I'm still hot. All right, we're going to get going here soon. Anybody out in the hallway? Let's come on in. We're running a little late. Let's get settled in. We'll get going. Lapel mic is on. Lapel mic is on. Okay, let's settle down. Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to the 2019 Missouri State Libertarian Convention. I am your state chair, Bill Slants, and I have the privilege of being up here for you today. Thank you very much. Whatever your reasons for being here today, I interpret them as that you give a damn. The people in this room are the people who are paying attention, the people who feel passionate about our advocacy, people who feel strongly about libertarianism. We as libertarians believe that what makes us strong, we offer logical and consistent solutions to resolve today's issues. Our approach to politics is based on moral principle and self-ownership. I would like to thank all of those who have worked hard on putting this convention together, particularly Cecil Ince, who stepped up earlier this year, volunteering to be the convention chair, and has worked tirelessly to make today happen. I'm dedicating this opening remarks to Rob Cunningham. Rob Cunningham passed on Easter this year, apparent heart attack, and Rob was a jolly, pleasant, dedicated libertarian who had nothing but positive thoughts in his heart all the time. And as we go through the day, know that he would be here maybe with a little puppy in hand, and he would inspire you all. Ran for Congress dozens of times, and we all miss Rob Cunningham. So I'm going to apologize right off the bat. I had a fantastic slideshow presentation, and as things go, I always talked about this. I've been talking about this for 30 years. I call it my slideshow problem, where you get the whole slideshow projector set up, and then the bulb burns out, and then everybody's running down to Walgreens looking for the bulb, and nobody can find a bulb, and so there's no slideshow. So for the moment, I don't have anything to put on the screen for you, but what you would see on that screen right now, if you were looking, would be the same thing that's in your packet. You have a packet here with today's kind of agenda and schedule. You pull it out, you can follow along. This is exactly what you'd be seeing on the screen right now. So let's go over that. This is what we're going to be covering today. Registration is going on as we speak. Our next item on the agenda will be the state of the party. That'll be presented by myself, John Phillips, and Alex Merced. After that, we're going to listen from our keynote speaker, Laura Ibuk, then from Cecil Ince on election judges, and then we're from Winston Apple. We're going to hear about ranked choice voting. After that, we'll hear from Gary Nolan about stop taxing our property. Then at 11:30, we'll have a local affiliate panel with John Phillips, Cecil Ince, and Tom Roulette. Breaking for lunch, which is going to be about an hour and 45 minutes. And during lunch or near the end of lunch, we'll have a keynote speaker for that. And then at the very end of lunch, we'll have our awards presentation for all the accomplishments people have contributed since our last convention. Then we break into our state committee meeting, and that's a 2.5 hours. That's free to anybody. You can participate. The state committee meeting, we'll form our state committee. We'll we'll elect our officers, and we'll run our business. That can take anywhere from 40 minutes to 4 hours, depending on how involved we get in the state committee meeting. But it's always fun to listen to everybody. Passionate views of what they feel strongly about. We're going to have a break for dinner. Lunch and dinner will be served right in this room, right over here. And then to close out the day, we'll have a presidential forum, which will be moderated by one of the local talents here from the local television station. Actually, kind of come in and run that, and there'll be some Q&A during that period of time. So that is our agenda for the day. Hope not to put anybody to sleep. I'm going to try to avoid that. So, state of the party. That's me. I'm going to go first, and we have a couple people going to follow me up. First and foremost, we are a political party. That's what we are. We're a political party, and our number one responsibility is to field candidates. It's the most important thing that we do. We like to spread the word of libertarianism. We want people to understand what being what's failed in our system, and we try to spread that word, and that's important as well. But there's nothing more important as a political party for us to field candidates. It's the responsibility of every single person in this room to run as a candidate. And when you run as a candidate, you need to take a friend to run as a candidate and encourage that friend to bring a friend to run as a candidate. And you can get super enthusiastic in running for candidacy. You're super enthusiastic in running as a candidate. Or you can just do the party a favor and put your name on the ballot and run as what they call a paper candidate, meaning that your name is on the ballot, you fill out a couple questionnaires, we'll even help you fill out the questionnaires, and file a few forms with the Missouri Ethics. But running as a candidate is the most important thing you can do for us. Membership of the Missouri LP seems pretty steady. However, active members appear to be putting the brakes on a little bit. It would be great to see more of you participating in our monthly executive meetings. This is your time to offer your guidance to the executive committee. What you feel passionate about, what should be on our radar, how we should be spreading the word of liberty, and how how we should do business. So, participating in one of our monthly calls may seem a little boring, and you may go on, and we may have some arguments or just discussions that go on that can be a little frustrating for a person just listening in. But there'll be opportunities for you to participate and have input. So it'd be really fantastic if more of you would become more involved in our monthly meetings and be active in helping provide us with guidance and suggestions on how we can better the party. We have some really great things that are going on. I'm going to have Sean will be up here a little bit later today, and he'll be talking to you about what's going on with the website and our mail campaign. It's been a long haul, a year or two, I think, with the transition of going from one website to the next. It is up and running now really well, and it's a pretty site. If you haven't been on it lately, it's a pretty site. And we also, through the discovery of a couple of different databases, found out we have about 3,500 names in our database of at least a minimum email contacts. Don't know how many phone numbers and addresses we have. That's huge. If you think about 3,400 people in the state of Missouri who will be receiving notices from us, think about how much impact we can have if we can reach those 3,500 people. We're using a system called MailChimp to reach those people. And MailChimp will send us statistic reports of who's clicked and opened the emails, or whether we have a link in the email, whether or not they click that. So if it takes you to register for the convention, or if it takes you to help out the state fair, they'll let you know who clicked what, and maybe if you have articles or PDFs that are in that email, it lets you know that. So the little sad note on that, that the couple of different MailChimps or emails that we sent to what we call the announce list, a couple that we sent out leading up to this convention, of the 3,400, 2,800 went unopened. That they were bypassed. They were either deleted, or they were just never opened, or they went to bad addresses. But MailChimp will even let you know if it's an undeliverable email. So these are clean email addresses that are not what they call bouncing back to us. 2,800 going unopened. So either the subject line is not what we need, and we could use a little input, or it's not grabbing their attention enough to give it a consideration to click it and open it. I don't know if anybody of you in the room received our MailChimp emails, but so I'm super encouraged that we have 3,400 names that we can reach out to when we have something exciting to talk about. But I'm a little discouraged that we are only reaching 600 of them. And if anybody can offer a suggestion or figure out a way to maybe make that a little better, we don't want to inundate them with spam, but we'd like to reach out to them at least a couple of times a month, maybe, just to let us know what's going on. So that's kind of cool, that part of it. Like I said. The Missouri Libertarian Party is financially strong. We have $25,000 in the bank, and continued donations will help us stay strong and allow us to explore aggressive ideas. At this time, we may not be ready to spend on a campaign. Obviously, spending on a campaign for our chances of being elected would be, in my opinion, to be all frank, is just going to be at this point in time a waste of money until we flip a few ideas with proportional representation or a few other ideas. So spending some of our money, which can be spent, it's there. We spend it on a good cause, but maybe not on a campaign. I've been thinking that we can invest some of our funds helping with petitions we feel could be successful. So you can hire people to help you get signatures in front of the Target store, the Walmart, or you go down to the state fair. You can hire people to do that to help you out, or just get involved in a couple petitions, and maybe just support the person, another entity that's actually got a good petition out there that we feel good about. That might be a great way to spend a little bit of our money, but that doesn't mean we should just spend because we have it. That just means that an investment, using that money wisely, could be to our benefit, obviously. I've already mentioned we now have a wonderful new website and email system. As we direct people to our website, it would be great to see fresh new content. Our webmaster, Sean O'Toole, keeps pretty busy running the site, and he keeps pretty busy just in his own life, all by himself. So he keeps the site running for us pretty well right now. I don't know if you've been on it, but it's working very well. It needs content. It needs data or information, exciting things that are going on. That website needs content, and we can't count on Sean to provide all that content. So I'm asking somebody here, or if you know somebody in the state of Missouri, a libertarian in the state of Missouri, I'm going to ask for a website editor or a website publisher, if you will. We won't be able to actually have access to actually posting things to the website directly. You would put the data together and send it to Sean. Sean will get it up there quickly. But expect Sean to come up with the content and then edit the content and then put he just doesn't have that type of time right now. So for those of you who have ideas of going on in your counties or your state fairs or your shows or that type of content, please think about writing up a little bit of a paragraph or two, or putting it together your little calendar or two, and get it out to Sean, and that will help us keep that web site fresh. As we go after these 3,400 people and we clicking them and directing them to our website, we don't, the first thing they see should not be something that happened a year ago. It should be something that's going to happen next month and something that's going to be coming up next year. So that would be fantastic. So Greg and I will be asking around for volunteers to get that going. We had a lot of other great accomplishments this year. Our state fair was probably the best ever. We have a state fair coming up again. It's always very difficult for us to get enough volunteers to work that. So please consider, taking on a 6-hour shift, 5-hour shift, 6-hour shift at the state fair in August, and go over there and shake some hands and step out in the boulevard and get the attention of some people with. We have a fantastic location at the state fair, so if you haven't been there to work once, maybe you want to step up and do that. That's about it for me right now. Please consider running for office. I can't emphasize it enough. That's the number one thing. Again, I'm going to repeat myself. That's the number one thing you can do for us. It's the number one thing you can do for me, and it's the number one thing you can do for Liberty. It gives you a chance. Running for office helps us with ballot access. Running for office, if you were to get a little active in that, and you go to a couple of the candidate forums or teachers union or whatever it might be, words that you say, which are often provocative because they're expecting to hear something from a D or an R, so they're going to hear something that they really haven't really heard before, be provocative, and then they will filter through your words things like, you're talking about the teachers union, and you're talking about education, and you're letting people know that maybe the public school system should be dismantled, or at best funded locally only, without tax dollars. That will shake people up. But the next time those teachers go and ask for a budget, they will be thinking, I wonder how we could get that done. They will think that. Whether or not they actually believe it, they will filter through it. So you'll have an impact whether or not you believe it. So please consider running for office and participate in some of our meetings. And that would be a fantastic thing for us. All right, that's what I have for State of the Party for the Missouri LP. Next up will be John Phillips, and he'll give you a little idea of the state of the party as it expands nationally. John?
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I am John Phillips. I am your Region 6 rep. My job is to represent you to the National Committee. For that, I'm going to do something that I do at every convention I've gone to so far. Take out your cell phones or a pen, something. My phone number is 217-412-5973. My email address is john.phillips@lp.org. I work for you, so don't hesitate to reach out if you've got a question or a concern, or if we can help you with something. Okay? Bob talked about running for office. I also agree that that is about the most important thing you can do for us, for yourself, for our cause. I believe it's so much that the one and only time I'm going to mention my personal campaign up here, which is where you may have heard that I'm running for the vice presidential nomination. Our campaign team has decided that we are going to give 10% of all donations to our campaign to local candidates. So that is how important that is. You get running for that local office, it gets you talking to people. You can run for these high-level offices, and that's great. It gets us some national exposure. But when you're running for your city council or for your education board or things like that, you actually talking to people one-on-one. You get to listen to what they've got to say. They get to listen to what you've got to say. And that's a great grassroots effort for us to start with. I'd also say that, and I'm going to touch on some of this during our panel later, the other thing you can do is be active in the community. Go out and volunteer somewhere. It doesn't have to be for a libertarian organization. Go out and volunteer for the Boys and Girls Club or for something like that. Wear your libertarian shirt when you go. Talk to people about things. Listen to what they've got to say. Just get that word in people's head, get them thinking about it. So let's talk about national for a minute. I'm also on the affiliate support committee, which makes it doubly my job to represent you. We've got a couple exciting things we're trying to do on the affiliate support committee right now. We're working to put together a contest for activism. We've already fundraised for that. Thankfully, if you know Erin Adams, she was very good at that. And so we've raised $1,000 to give away to a local affiliate for activism. We'll be publishing the details of that later, but I think most of you understand, you know, a $1,000 influx to a local affiliate is a big boost for a lot of you. Also, coincidentally, going along with Bill's thing, would give them some content for the website. If you go out there and do your activism, you take some pictures and you send it on to Sean. We're also putting together some chapter development resources that we're going to try and make available nationally. Things like how to start a chapter, you know, some samples of bylaws, those kind of things. Not directly involved with Affiliate Support Committee, we've got the CRM project, some of you may or may not know about. It's a project specifically for the Libertarian Party that would be at the end goal is to be equivalent or better than Nation Builder. Right now it's available for free at a basic level, and then there's some relatively inexpensive upper levels, and they're really rolling out some new content for that. Let's see, we've got some of you may know Kara Schulz, who's working very hard for this national campaign to recruit candidates. So if you would like to run for office, which once again I heavily encourage, I've been on the campaign trail for a year now in different campaigns, and it's fun. It could be a hassle, it could be expensive, but it's fun to meet people. It's fun to get out there and listen to their stories. But Kara can do things like get your name listed on the national website. We had a program where we were doing free websites for candidates on the national, as a subsidiary to the national website that we're looking to bring back. We had to roll it back with some budget issues, but we're working on some things to get that going. We've also got a young gentleman named Apollo Pizzell working for us as a contractor, and his expertise is running for office. And so if you've got questions, we can put you in touch with him. Very helpful, very knowledgeable. The biggest thing you can do, and I'm going to touch more on this in our panel later probably, is when you're thinking about your local affiliate, your state affiliate, the national, whatever works better for you, there's this thing going around that on the internet and that they talk about, and I really like it. And our development coordinator in Illinois has started instituting it across the state. And that's what they call SMART goals. So when you're thinking about, okay, hey, how can I do something? What can I accomplish? How can I do it? You set these SMART goals. The first thing is be specific. What's your goal? Okay, that's the S. Be specific. The second thing is it has to be measurable. You know, not, oh, I'm going to spread libertarianism far and wide. That's not measurable. I'm going to talk to 100 people. That's measurable. Phone keeps shutting off on me, sorry. The next thing is it attainable? Okay. I would love to say I'm going to go out and talk to 1 million people in the next month, but we know that that's not attainable. So set yourself an attainable goal. Is it relevant? Is it relevant to what you're trying to accomplish? You know, we can go out and scream taxation is theft and mean it. We can. But if we're trying to legalize marijuana, is that relevant to your current goal? Make it relevant. Make it time-based. Set yourself a time limit. That's very important. You know, okay, I'm not just throwing this idea out there and someday it's going to happen. If you make your goal attainable and measurable, set yourself a time limit to do those things in. The biggest thing you can really do to help the state of the party, and Alex has heard me mention this before, and I think he's mentioned it before, we trade back and forth a lot, is listen. I had a great conversation with that gentleman's wife last night where we were both listening to each other. And when you listen, you can develop empathy between each other. Like if I come to you and I just start telling you what this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, okay, we might agree, so that's great. But if I listen to you first and build that bond, then you're far more likely to listen to me when I come and say, okay, hey, I can relate to that. Maybe I can say I can't relate to that, but I know somebody that can, whatever. And then let's talk about how that works. Let's talk about how libertarian solutions can address your problem. If I could just go start screaming it in your face, you're less likely to listen. So listen to them first, and most times they will give you the courtesy of listening in return. I don't have a whole lot more than that for you guys. What I do have is a few more minutes to answer some questions if anybody's got any. Yes, sir.
I have a question. The previous speaker talked about the website, but I didn't see where he gave us an address. And is that there's a national website that I looked at, and I'm wondering, was he talking about the state?
He was talking about the state website address, yes, sir, which is MissouriLP.org or LPMMO.org. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Does that web help, because I can actually help with like Facebook pages and whatnot, if you need a little help in that area.
Okay.
I manage the Missouri Campus Reform organization on Facebook. So one more page to help, like let's say a page like your page, you want to return that like, I can go ahead and just do that for you. It helps you with search engine optimization and whatnot. I'd be willing to help with that, but I'm not really into the creating.
No, and that's an excellent thing. There's all kinds of ways to do that. First of all, talk to Bill. Who do you have handling social media? Is that Sean still? No, Randy. Get with Randy, and he'll help you with the state access. I would also recommend there's a Facebook group called Open Source Liberty, and all that group is a group of volunteers that help each other out in liberty-based causes. A lot of it's candidacies, but if you've got something that is a liberty cause that we can help you with, that's what the whole group is about, and it is nationwide. We've got members from California to Maine, and so if you're wanting to help out on social media, that's a great outreach tool for you. And then Kara Schulz would be a good person to talk to. And Jess Mears. At National, they're always looking for people to help out, especially on social media. And I believe it's, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just jess.mears@lp.org, right? And the same with Kara. Kara is CARA .Schulz, SHULZ at LP. Sam? Right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Tell a little biographical information about yourself, please.
Absolutely.
How did you get where you are?
Oh, that's a long, twisted story. Okay, so I was born in Nashville. My father worked for Procter & Gamble, and as such moved around a lot. So I've lived over, almost like a military family. I've lived in 9 different states. Went to high school just outside of Pittsburgh. Did my first 2 years at college at Penn State main campus. Then did a year at one of their branch campuses. Then dropped out for a while. Then finished up at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. I started following libertarianism in the 80s with Ron Paul, but I stayed independent until Gary Johnson. I thought about joining with Harry Brown. I liked Harry Brown a lot. And then a few years later, I wasn't quite so happy with things that were going on, and so I drew back a little bit. But honestly, at that point, I kind of drew back from politics a lot in general, and took a couple years of just totally away from politics. And then supported Gary Johnson in 2012 with his campaign on a very small volunteer level, just putting out signs in a couple places, things like that. And then in 2016, I just decided I'm going to go full hog, and I formed a county chapter, of which I'm still currently the chair. We had a lot of candidate events that year, did a lot of things for our governor candidates, and or actually we didn't have a governor candidate that year, excuse me, our state senate candidate, our comptroller candidate, a couple of candidates. The stayed involved with the state party to the point, and developed some contacts in the media and helped the state media, or the media in our state, cover some of our events a little bit. Kept looking for ways to get more and more involved, and at our state level, we've got a great team, and we were very full. And so they were like, "Hey, you can help us out with this, but I don't have a position for you." And I said, "Well, what could I do that would help us the best?" And they said, "Well, first you get to serve on the platform committee," so I did, as an alternate that year. And then they said, "Well, we'd really like the next LNC rep. Our LNC rep is retiring," and that was David Demarest, if you remember him. "And we'd really like the next LNC rep to be from Illinois, and you're a business owner, and you can take time off if you need to go to these events." And so I did that and was lucky enough to get elected. And it's been an interesting journey, though I get to spend a lot of time with Alex and Sam and people that I've really enjoyed, and coming out to meet people at these conventions. By trade, I own a garage. So I'm a mechanic. If you look carefully, I've still got a little grease under my fingers. When I was campaigning for my city council, I like to tell people that what that meant for them is that I knew how to fix things. And that if I didn't know how to fix things, I knew how to look it up and figure out how to fix it. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So you travel around the region?
I'm trying. I made a promise when I got elected to go to every state that we were in the region. Unfortunately, I'm missing South Dakota today because I'm here. But they didn't. You know, Cecil got hold of me well before they did. They even had their dates established. So those kind of conflicts happen. I'm hoping to Skype with them later. But yes, I've traveled all over the region, and then in addition, like I'm going to Massachusetts in July. I'm going to South Carolina in November, and a few other ones that I can get away for. Okay, the perception of the attitude is optimistic, and I'm going to explain that a little bit, in that it's very optimistic when you come to an event like this. Do not judge everybody by Facebook, although we get a lot of burnout from activists who get burnt out on Facebook because it gets so combative on Facebook. Don't do that. You come to these events and meet people, and it revitalizes your energy every time you go. You know, I mean, I get a little tired sometimes. I get a little worn out, a little frustrated, and then I come and I hang out and have a great conversation like I did with you and your wife last night, and I'm sure I will with other people today. And that energy comes back, and I'm like, this is what we're doing this for. So that's the attitude I get. Anybody else? Yes, sir, again.
Tell us a little bit about the Illinois ballot status.
Oh, the Illinois ballot status is miserable. We have to, every 2 years, get to be on a statewide ballot, we have to get 25,000 signatures minimum in 60 days. And of course, you all know about petitioning, which means, okay, it's 25,000, so we really have to get close to 50. And so that's brutal every couple of years. I ran for a partisan race over the summer for county board. My competitors, who are both Republicans, had to get 30 signatures. I had to get 404, which of course they challenged. Of course, they challenged while we were in New Orleans. And I got back from New Orleans Wednesday night at midnight and had to have my challenge answer ready by Friday at 9 a.m. Well, I wasn't going to chase down the 30 people I had to chase down to get affidavits in 24 hours with returning to work, so that didn't happen. So I turned around and I filed his write-in. And I told them when I did it, I said, you guys are going to do this. I'm going to go around and every person I talk to, I'm going to tell how you spent money on lawyers to get me thrown off the ballot because you were so scared of me. And I'm going to explain to them the difference in the signature requirements. Well, that worked a little bit. We haven't been super successful with it, but actually a Democratic state senator from my area, because the Democrats supported my campaign because they couldn't get anybody to run in that district, heard my story and filed a bill to make the ballot access equal. That, you know, right. What a concept. And he said, hey, he goes, I'm going to get some grief from my party for this, but fair's fair. Now, it got shut down in committee. He's looking, at the end of the year, they do, you know, according to him, I just talked to him the other day, they do an elections omnibus every year. And so he's hoping to sneak it into that one. He says election bills, regardless, coming up separately, almost never go through committee unless they're part of this package. So he's going to try and run it through again. We actually had some bipartisan support on that one. We had some Republicans. We even had a Republican file a sister bill in the House. So we are making some progress. We're drawing some attention to it, but it is still one of the more difficult states in the country. It costs us about $100,000 every 2 years. Thanks. Oh.
How do you pay for that?
Well, we do a lot of fundraising, and then honestly, the National Party does have a battle access fund, and they've been very generous in helping us out in the past.
That is Illinois raising.
About half. About half.
Do you have a single major donor or two?
No, we don't. No. It's we do like at our convention. One of our our most successful fundraisers is our auction at the end of every convention. We typically raise, $10,000 plus there. We just get donated items from members, or sometimes a local business owner or something, and then we have an auction at the end of it. And usually one of our keynote speakers will do the auction. Larry Sharp did it for us a couple years ago. So it's a fun little event, and that's one of our best fundraisers. We actually have free membership, so we don't make any money from membership. It's all based on fundraising and donations. Is that it? Well, yes, sir.
Are you familiar with proportional representation, and do you have a take on it?
I am familiar with proportional representation. I actually learned about it from you guys. When I first got elected, as a member of the LNC, we have to do a report on our region for every meeting. So we have to do a quarterly meeting. And as part of my first report, I was having a little trouble getting hold of somebody, and I got hold of Cecil, and Cecil gave me a number, and I called them, and they told me all about proportional representation, and then I looked it up. And my take on it is, I think it's intriguing. I would love to see it tried. I'm a little concerned about how it would work in application, but I'm concerned that way about everything because, let's be honest, the system we have right now sounded great on paper, but it's not working either. I would support efforts. I support almost any effort for alternative voting methods, whether it's proportional representation or whether it's ranked choice voting. I think we definitely need to move for a change in those directions. Thank you. And I believe Alex is next, isn't he?
Okay, our next speaker on State of the Party Address is Alex Merced. He's the LNC Vice Chair. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. My name is Alex Merced. I'm the Vice Chair of the Libertarian National Committee. And first off, I want to say how much I deeply appreciate all you guys having me here today. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Every time I travel to one of these conventions, it just makes me fall in love with the Libertarian Party that much more. Seeing all the hard work, seeing everybody doing the right things, it's been amazing. And when it comes to the state of the Libertarian Party, the state of the party is good. And we're going to talk about why. Okay? First off, to appreciate where you've been, you have to take a look at where you were. And I mean, over 40 years ago, we didn't have the organization we have in every state. We hadn't climbed all the ballot access barriers that we have climbed. And these are things that the Republicans, the Democrats, these are issues that they never had to deal with. They're the ones who erected most of those barriers after they already had their foothold, but we still overcame. And we are the largest emerging party in the country, okay? And that's something to be proud of. Why? And why do I think that's the case? Is because we are an example of the very values that we believe in. The Libertarian Party is a free market for libertarian action. And why do free markets work? Because it allows us to learn quicker, to adapt faster through trial and error. And that's what happens in the Libertarian Party. We are not top down. We're not sitting there telling people this is how you do things. We let people try different things, different candidates try different strategies, different tactics, different messages, and we learn what works and what doesn't. And because of that, we've been nimble. We've grown quicker. We've been able to adapt faster and do more with less. And that's why we are the fastest growing emerging party. But there are so many reasons for optimism going on right now. So when I think of why the Libertarian Party is important, I generally think of 4 things. Most people think of 2, I think of 4. The first one is politics, okay? The idea of electing candidates, okay? And we have some impressive wins over the last year. Jeff Hewitt over there in Riverside, California, in the County Board of Supervisors, okay? We just had Shannon Thomason elected to mayor over there in Texas. We just had Deborah Altman in New York City elected to the New York City Education Council, okay? And she's someone who's going to be an amazing figure on that council. She is a single mother who really, really is passionate about making sure that her daughter has the best education living in New York City. And she's going to be someone who's going to really be a powerful voice for moving education in a more libertarian direction, giving parents more power, more choice in how their kids get educated. So we have some wins on the board. And on top of that, we have momentum. Okay, we take a look at Bethany Boldez in Idaho, Wyoming, almost unseating as Senate Majority Leader. Take a look at many elections. Take a look at Larry Sharp, who got 90,000 votes, which is a huge increase from previous gubernatorial elections, getting New York ballot access for the first time in New York's history. And then again, Deborah Altman, that was very recent. Jeff Hewitt, that's last year. The momentum continues. The wins continue. The reasons for optimism continue growing. But 2, but politics isn't just electing candidates and running candidates. It's also ballot initiatives. We can change the rules directly because at the end of the day, we're just trying to move public policy in a more libertarian direction, in a place where you have a world more built on consent, where we can choose how our social and economic arrangements occur. And why does that matter? Why does consent matter? Because when our arrangements are based on consent, there's more reciprocity. When you're in a relationship, you do what you can to make your partner happy because you want them to continue to consent to that relationship, and they're going to do the same. So consent creates reciprocity, but it also brings accountability because if someone isn't providing value, they can walk away. So you have reciprocity, accountability, and you have knowledge. Every time we make a choice and it works out well, we learn something. Every time we make a choice and it doesn't work out well, we learn something. So in our social and economic arrangements, where there is consent, we have reciprocity, we have accountability, and we have knowledge. Wouldn't we want more of that in healthcare? Wouldn't we want more of that in education? Wouldn't we want that more in every aspect of our lives? That's what the libertarian message is. We want that accountability, reciprocity, and knowledge by bringing consent to all our social and economic arrangements. But through ballot initiatives, we can make that change directly. So We can elect candidates who can make those changes. We can do ballot initiatives that make those changes. And we can lobby our legislators, okay? As John was talking about, talking to officials over there to change ballot access laws in Illinois. Okay, Laura Ebke working with legislatures across the country to reduce licensing reform, to do licensing reform to help people be able to have more opportunities in their life. When I was in the Delaware Convention a few weeks ago, there was an organization by the name of Delcana that works on lobbying the Delaware government regarding cannabis reform, because right now they have a bill that would legalize cannabis, but also cartelize the industry in that state and leave it only a few companies and cut out the ability for Delaware farmers to be able to participate in this new industry in Delaware. So they are sitting there trying to make sure that not only do we push things in the right direction, but we push them in the right direction the right way. So there's so many different things we can do as a political party as far as organizing in the political space, but that's not the only space. Of course, there's the element of education. When we run campaigns, when we organize, when we throw events in our communities, we are helping expose people to libertarian ideas, to new ideas, that idea of consent that they may have never heard before, never thought in that way before. So everyone always kind of thinks that politics and education, that's generally what we think. But what we don't oftentimes hear about is the idea of community. And the community within the Libertarian Party is one of its greatest selling points, because it's an example of the world we're trying to create, a world where people choose to congregate with each other, where we choose to help each other. When I go to Libertarian Party events and Libertarian Party conventions, I see people carpooling. I see people taking care of each other's kids. I see people giving a place to each other's stay. Everyone's helping each other out consensually. That's exactly the world we're trying to create. That community, that sense of camaraderie, it makes people stay. One of the big reasons I stuck around after 2013 when I ran for New York City Public Advocate was because of the relationships I built with the people within the Libertarian Party that kept me around. Okay, that emboldened me and it energized me. So the community we build within the Libertarian Party is one of our best recruiting tools, is also one of our best transmissions for education and political action, because it keeps people in the game. Okay, and again, also acts as an example of our ideas. But the fourth thing is healing. A lot of times we hear people say, we all kind of understood these libertarian ideas when we were kids. The idea that, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. We kind of understood as a kid, and somewhere along the way we kind of forgot. But there's a reason why we forget. It's because we get hurt. We make mistakes. People hurt us. There's scar tissue that comes up with growing in life. And oftentimes people can't hear you. They can't hear the libertarian idea. They can't consider libertarian solutions because of the scar tissue that's built up through life. That's make it harder for them to trust in the idea that we can organize voluntarily, that we can give people freedom. But through the community within the Libertarian Party, through the advocacy, through our outreach politically, we help people heal. We help restore their faith in individuals, so that way they can actually listen to the message and hear the message and embrace the message. And that means more votes when a candidate runs for office. That means more votes for a ballot initiative. That means more volunteers, more donors, more media attention as that community grows, as we help people heal and see that message and hear that message. So in the state, when I go from state to state, I'm seeing that all those aspects grow. I'm seeing, again, better electoral results. And when you are a member of the party, when you pay, whether it's your $25 to become a member of national, or your dues to your state party or dues to your county party, it goes a long way. When we take a look at some of the investments we've made at national, whether it's Kara Schultz and Apollo Pazell, that who basically got involved in many elections and saw great results for it. Higher vote totals, more organization, all sorts of things that we can be very proud of to show that investment was worth it. So by renewing your membership, by donating to your party, again, whether it's national, state, or local, you're helping to fund those things. The CRM project, which is allowing more states to be able to basically keep track of data, so that way every time there's an election, they're not starting from scratch data-wise. There's so much that's going on that when you support the party, when you stay involved, you're helping build that. You're helping build that infrastructure for a brighter future. And we're seeing that future build up now. So the bottom line is the state of the party is good. We're electing people. We're seeing higher vote totals. We're getting ballot access in states we haven't gotten them before. We are seeing more people donating. We're seeing more people become members. You're seeing more people change their registration. By every metric, you're seeing positive momentum. There's every reason for optimism. Now, a couple other housekeeping things. John, you mentioned Open Source Liberty, which is a great Facebook group. If you're someone who wants to volunteer, kind of meet other candidates and say, hey, can I help out your campaign? A quick way to get to the Open Source Liberty Facebook group is I created a website, libertariansocial.com, where I curate sort of all the good libertarian Facebook groups, because oftentimes it can be some of them can be rougher than others. So this way, you can kind of find all. There's also other volunteer groups that are specific. Like there's a group for like press releases. So if you want to help and coordinate with other people for press releases or for canvassing, there's also different Facebook groups. You can find those at libertariansocial.com, so that way you can get to them very easily. With that, I'll open it up for any questions that people have. Yes, Sam.
Alex, do you mind if I give an update on the convention next week?
Please do.
I'm Ken Goldstein. I'll be speaking later at lunch. But I'm one of my several functions on the Libertarian National Committee is that I serve on the convention committee for our national convention. And I'm very pleased to say that we already have ticket sales up and running for the national convention. As of last week, I think we sold already 127 packages of various types. The convention budget is roughly $300,000, and the revenues a year before the convention are in excess of $100,000 already. So we're well on our way to having the convention paid for before it starts. If you've never been to Libertarian Party National Convention, I have to tell you, it's quite the rush to walk into a room full of over 1,000 people that think somewhat the same way you do. We don't always agree on everything. If you get two libertarians in a room, they're going to have 5 different opinions about stuff. But it's a great feeling to walk in and feel the camaraderie of all these people working for a common goal of reducing government in our time if at all possible. Struggling to go. The hotel rooms are booking up relatively quickly. In fact, we just had to file for an addendum with the Marriott down there to add more rooms on what we call the outer boundaries, like on the 19th of May and on the 26th of May for people that might want to extend their stay in hospitality, which is going to be a class also. I strongly encourage you to become a delegate from Missouri. And delegate allocations for the states are based on 2 factors. One of which we can't do very much about now because it's based on Missouri's vote in the last presidential election for the Libertarian Party candidate. The other factor that we can have some impact on is based on Libertarian Party national membership, paid membership of $25 a year from Missouri as of October 31st of this year. So 6 months after the convention is the deadline for membership allocation of delegates. So if you want to increase, I have no idea what Missouri's delegate allocation normally is, but about 25. That you want to increase it, if you want to try to increase it, go out and recruit people, take $25 for national membership if they're not already. That comes with a few other honor benefits, but basically it will add for Missouri's delegate allocation. So more people can go to Missouri and be part of that great fun that's going to be 5 or 6 days at Austin, Texas. So I strongly encourage you to do that if you've not done it before. Austin, I think is going to be my 10th or 11th national convention, and I've never failed to just have great time with each other. So thank you, John.
Awesome. So yes, definitely be there. It's going to be a good time. Any other questions? Yes.
Alex, a year or 2 ago, I think Bill Redpath came and spoke to us.
Mhm.
And I think he said there's been one person so far in the nearly 50-year history of the Libertarian Party that's ever been elected to a state legislature in states where we don't elect people on just one party.
Mhm.
Is that, am I remembering that right, you think?
Huh? Go for it.
In Alaska, we've got a couple people elected to the legislature. In New Hampshire, they have, what they call it, delegation vote, yeah. So we've got future people there.
And then, there was much acclaim given to the number of people who were elected in the last election.
Mhm.
How many of those people were elected on a Libertarian Party ticket? How many people had Libertarian Party on their name?
The difference between partisan and nonpartisan, I don't have that exact number off the top of my head, but I can get you that information. So make sure everyone should have my card on the table. So shoot me an email, and I'll make sure to get you that exact number. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you guys very much for having me. I'll be here all day, so feel free to come chat. I always like to kind of hear about everyone's experiences and whatnot. And again, I appreciate it deeply from the bottom of my heart for having me here today. And again, the future's bright. So I'll talk to you guys soon.
Don't forget this. Thanks, Alex. Alec. Give me a second here. I'll get there. Maybe. Okay, thank you, Alec. Next on our agenda, I don't have on the agenda, today's agenda, scheduled breaks. We'll kind of play that by ear today. So we're going to invite our keynote speaker up, and I think that may be when she's done, we'll have the appropriate time to take 10 or 15 minutes. Have you ever been to a convention where I try to keep it organized? I usually keep the breaks pretty short. So keep that in mind when we break, go, come back. But we'll break probably after Laura speaks. Our next keynote speaker for this morning is Laura Ebuk. She is an American politician from Nebraska, a resident of the city of Crete, and in the southeastern part of the state. She was elected to the Nebraska legislature in 2014. Please welcome Laura Ebuk. Thank you.
Let's everybody stand up for just 30 seconds while I get up there and get your blood circulating.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks. See, that's a good thing, right? Okay, so first of all, thank you all for inviting me to come and speak with you today. I think this marks, I've lost track, 12 or 13 of the states that I've been invited to speak at, and I've been impressed as I go around that libertarians in real life are not like libertarians on Facebook. So that makes me feel good. I'm not going to bore you with most of my story. Most of you have probably heard some portion of it at some event. So I'll give you the really abridged version of it. One, I was born into a family of Goldwater Republicans. They were all very libertarian-leaning. We had bookshelves filled with Hayek and Mises and Friedman. I was a young activist. I was a Reagan 76 Republican in high school. Cast my first vote for him in '80. And while I came to sort of regret that as I got older, Reagan of '80 was not the same as Reagan of '76. I went to college, got married, went to grad school. I taught political science. I had kids. Now I have a grandchild. So there's all sorts of excitement going on in my life. I got elected to my local school board in 2002, and I served for 12 years on that. And then in 2008, I got to go back in time just a little bit to 2006. In 2006, I was on the school board. I was running for re-election, and my dad decided to run a petition campaign for the state legislature after the primary. We have a nonpartisan legislature, and it's a best of top two move through, and there had been 3 people in the primary, the incumbent and a challenger moved through, and then 2 weeks later, the incumbent withdrew. So the challenger would have gotten in for free. So my dad, believing that a challenger, that a challenger shouldn't be unchallenged. Somebody who had never served in office, shouldn't be allowed to just move right in without a challenge. My dad mounted a petition campaign in the district that I live in, and he asked me to be his campaign manager. We lost, but we did have a good time, and it was sort of a fantastical event because it was a lot of it. And we collected the signatures, got him on the ballot, and then had a disappointing election night. But it rejuvenated some things in it kind of deepened my soul. I'd become an academic mostly. Except for my time on the school board, I'd become pretty academic. I was teaching political science. I had my PhD and had decided that that was the direction of my political interests. And then in 2006, my dad runs for the legislature, loses, but I said, hey, this was kind of fun. And I started kind of messing around. I was doing some political blogging, and then sometime in 2007, I ran into some YouTube videos of this guy by the name of Ron Paul. Now, I had been sort of vaguely aware of Ron Paul before, but I hadn't paid. He was a congressman from Texas. I'm from Nebraska. I didn't pay that much attention to him, and I started watching what he was doing, and it's like, wow. There's something there. Didn't agree with him on every single thing. Probably some of his stuff was a little further someplace than where I would have gone. But it's like, okay, he's actually talking about liberty. And so got involved in the Paul campaign in 2007 and 2008, and then again in 2012. And remember, I was a registered Republican at the time. Helped in 2008 to found the Republican Liberty Caucus in Nebraska. Because I thought that, well, gosh, Ron Paul's there. There must be some hope for liberty in the Republican Party yet, right? And I ran for the legislature in 2014. We have term limits in Nebraska, so the guy who had won was term limited out in 2014. And you got to remember that Nebraska's term limited. We're nonpartisan, so we don't run under a Republican or Democrat label or anything else. It just shows up as a nonpartisan race in the Nebraska legislature. And my district is sort of a reddish-purple district, mostly red, but there was a significant chunk of sort of blue in the community where I live. And it was a really tight race. In 2014, I won by a whole 167 votes out of about 12,000 cast. And I was assisted nominally by the Republican Party. Not very much, but they were out there. In April of 2016, by the time we'd gotten to April of 2016, I'd kind of made the governor mad. Our governor is a Republican. He also owns the Chicago Cubs, if that gives you some sense of the level of financial backing that he's got. And he had gotten angry with the legislature because we had in the first 2 years that I was there, we had repealed the death penalty. We had supported driver's license for DACA recipients, and we had supported occupational licensing for DACA recipients. And he had vetoed all those bills. This is technically speaking, about 35 members in the legislature were Republicans, were registered Republicans, and so that didn't make out of 49. Okay, so that didn't make him very happy, and so there were a lot of Republicans that were kind of on his bad side. He was running other Republicans against incumbents who were running in 2016. I was invited to speak to the Libertarian Party of Nebraska convention in 2016 because I guess I was the closest thing to a libertarian they could find that would come for free, and so it was a great time because during the Paul years I had crossed paths with a lot of these folks. They were a good bunch of people. And so I spoke to the Libertarian Party of Nebraska. Any of you know Ben Backus? Okay, so Ben was an officer in our state, and he's been to the national convention a number of times. And as we were standing in lunch, Ben comes up to me and he says, Senator, if you ever decide to make a party switch, we'd be happy to have you. I said, oh, well, thanks, that's nice. You know, it really wasn't something, I mean, I'd always felt a kinship with libertarians, but I hadn't really, you know, I'd been a Republican forever. And I really hadn't thought too much about it, even though I was disturbed with the direction that the Republican Party was going by that time in 2016. So in May, about a month later, I went to the Republican State Convention, and I sat in the back of the room. I didn't go as a delegate. I just sat in the back of the room because that's what good, you know, elected officials do. Sat in the back of the room, and the governor got up, and he called out by name 18 state legislators who had voted contrary to his will on some of these, the three votes, DACA, and the death penalty. And he says, and it's time for us to start electing more platform Republicans, because the Republican Party platform, you know, was contrary to those votes. And I was in a good place. I got up, I walked out the door, I told my colleague that I was sitting next to, I said, I'm done. I got up, I left, I went home, and I changed my party registration online. I guess if I was honest, I'd known for quite a while that there wasn't much hope for the libertarian cause in the Republican Party, but that clinched it for me between the Trump phenomenon and the Ricketts phenomenon. That's our governor's name. In Nebraska, it's like there's no place for us, and so I switched parties. Shortly thereafter, I started getting told that I wasn't a real libertarian, but that's okay. I lost my reelection in 2018, but I have to tell you, it wasn't for lack of trying. And it wasn't for lack of money, which is unusual in libertarian circles. I was well funded. I had great volunteers. But there were some infrastructure type things that I would argue that the Libertarian Party needs to work on. One of those is things like the CRM, and I ended up having to buy my data from I360, because they have which cost a lot of money, but they have a way of modeling things. What we need to do is we need to develop an infrastructure that allows candidates to micro-target, because micro-targeting is pretty important, and I didn't bring my son along this time, but I'm going to show you this. Well, maybe I'll let you hold it. Okay, so what you have here, you have on the left, you have all of the hit pieces that came out against me in 2018. No, not all of them. That's the ones that I could scrounge up. And they talked about me siding with criminals. They talked about Libertarian Laura being a chief lieutenant in the Libertarian Party, which was news to me. But all these things, and we'll put this out on a table here in a few minutes. Those are all things that came out against me. Okay, we had no infrastructure. The only pro-EBKE or anti-my opponents mailings that came out into my district was this, and it's much smaller. It was a 3x5 postcard from the NRA, which endorsed me, and so it went to a relatively small number. All those other things went out to everybody in the district. Republicans, Democrats, me, I got a lot of them from the Republican Party telling how terrible I was. So we got to be prepared, because when the big parties actually start taking us seriously, you can put that down or put it over there or whatever. So, thanks. When the big parties actually start taking us seriously, and when they actually start worrying about us, they're going to come after us. And that's what happened in my race. They took me seriously. I was an incumbent. I was chair of the Judiciary Committee. I had people, already approaching me about running for speaker in 2 years. I had all sorts, it's a different paradigm than we oftentimes see in libertarian politics. And I had the support of the party. I was well funded, and people took me seriously. I was able to actually get a legislation done, including the Occupational Licensing Reform Board Act that now has me working for the Platt Institute. I landed softly after my loss in November. So with the exception of Jeff Hewitt's race out in California, in terms of 2018, and a few municipal and local school board races, it seems to me that 2018 generally wasn't. It doesn't look on the surface anyhow like a particularly positive year for libertarians. And so here's my analysis, my political scientist analysis as to why. Okay, first of all, the two old parties really hate a challenge. Okay, I would argue that I voted pretty conservatively. It's Nebraska. I voted pretty conservatively, economically speaking. I voted for smaller government, but I also believed in civil liberties. So the Republicans showed in my race that they'd rather have what has proven to be a so-called rhino. He got elected, and he's made people mad already. The guy that beat me, he likes big government when he likes big government, and that's the problem that you have with a lot of Republicans. They like big government when they like big government. They say that they don't like it, but there are some things for which they certainly do like it. So there's that. I think the other piece of it is that citizens haven't really become comfortable with libertarians, partially because they don't know who we are, partially because most haven't actually seen a libertarian elected to office and serving and know that we aren't Dracula or something, because the bottom line is that when you have somebody like a Jeff Hewitt, or me, or Caleb, or Brandon, the guys that were in New Hampshire, when you have people who are actually serving in office, Ben Backus is a city councilman. He's the highest-ranking libertarian elected official in Nebraska right now. He is a city councilman in Gering, Nebraska, which is a population of about 7,000. It's a small town, but they see that he's actually able to do some things, and he raises some good questions. But most folks haven't had a chance to see libertarians do that. And until they get a chance to see us do that, and don't just see us with naked guys on stage or whatever, it's going to be tough to switch that perception. So I encourage the folks in Nebraska to really focus on, and we don't have to worry about ballot access. I was able in 2017 to get a change to one of those election omnibus bills, which changes the access so that if you have a minimum of 10,000 registered voters, we register by party, that you don't have to re-qualify via either a 3% or 5% ballot results in a statewide race. We used to have to do that, so we're good because we got about 15,000 registered voters. So libertarians are set in Nebraska, but if you don't have to worry about ballot access too much, run those local races and try to win. Run serious candidates for local races, because if they get elected to school board or to city council or to county boards, then people will start seeing that they've got some experience. And it also gives you, it's a nice resume builder, because when you have a state legislative race or something like that come up, you can say, hey, I served for 4 years on my county board. Look at what we did. So I think that's important. I think that's important to do. But recognize that the old parties are going to distort and spin. When they start taking you seriously, we got to be ready. We've got to have, the full armor on, because when they take you seriously, you're going to get hit. And there's no doubt about it. And we saw the same thing happen in 2016. People were starting to take Johnson and Weld seriously, for better or worse. And then what happens? Then you get all sorts of things making fun of them, and at one point we were pushing up close to that 10 to 12% mark in the polls, and then flattened out. Third point I would say is that libertarians haven't really figured out what they need to do to win. And again, I come at things from a political perspective, from the practical politics perspective. I think we got to look at how to win, and we got to learn how to win. The CRM was part of it. Up-to-date voter data is an important part of it, but money is important. A campaign, needs money. And they don't necessarily, if you're willing to go out, if you're in a smaller race, that's one of the reasons why I encourage small races, the local races, because smaller races you can get by running a serious campaign if you got a little bit of money for a few Facebook ads and a few newspaper ads and some palm cards. You don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on advertising. But if you can, if you can get out door to door, you don't have to do mailing. Okay, mailing is an important part of a lot of races. It certainly was an important part of mine. And so we need to figure out a way to make sure that people have money. We need to figure out how people can have good enough data so that they can micro-target, so that they can do good mailing and calling. And then we need to figure out our messaging. And, if we want to win, we have to have all of those things, plus we have to have volunteers. And there will be some people who will say that, well, we're not really, I've actually had people tell me this, we're really not in it to win. And I said, well, why bother then? If you're not going to try to win once in a while, you're not going to win them all. But if you're not in it to win, what are you a party for? I mean, even if it takes us 20 years to win a lot of races, why are you doing it if you're not trying to win? Something else that we need to look at, and that kind of goes along with my little banner over there, we need to look at figuring out ways to create some third-party PACs. It's a bad word, but it's the name of the game. If we don't have some PACs that can do, instant response, rapid response when things start coming out. This last time around, because of the partisan nature of things, the Republican, all those things were sent out by the Republican Party of Nebraska. That said, had I still been a registered Republican, the governor might have still been mad at me. But what he would have done is he would have gotten other third parties to send out stuff. Some of my colleagues in 2016 who were running for re-election, who were registered Republicans, and they had other Republicans running against them, found that the governor, who has deep ties with some groups like Americans for Prosperity and things like that, and there was one that was called Leaves of Liberty, or I don't know, something like that. It's from outside of the state. They were mailing stuff in that were that were of that type with the Republican candidates. So whether it's the party or whether it's a third party organization or PAC, we need more. We need the ability to respond rapidly. And I don't know. This may be a function of kind of the nature of the Libertarian Party. When I was still with the old party, the executive director was a full-time employee and was tasked with, making sure that certain races were won, that resources could go in there. And he didn't have to go to the state central committee or the chair or the executive committee to turn around a mailing real fast. So if I saw something out in the district that was coming at me, I could call him up and I could say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. He says, I'll take care of it. That's all I heard, right? The next day, 2 days later, there were mailings that were coming out that counteracted what I was being heard. We have trouble doing that. Nebraska doesn't have the money. They couldn't have done it anyhow. But, it was one of my frustrations in last summer when we got into September that there were some things that we knew about my opponent that we could have responded with, that we had closed the gap quite a bit, and there were some things that we could have done that would have perhaps turned the tide, but it was the kind of thing that the candidate can't do, that you just can't, you can't say, well, okay, in this particular instance, it was, he'd been nasty to some women that we'd heard about, things like that. And the candidate just, there's some things that the candidate could but doesn't want to do, but those are the kinds of things that get done by third-party organizations or by the party organizations with some frequency. And it's rough and tumble politics, and we'd all like to stay above it. But the bottom line is, there's a reason why the hit pieces, why the negative pieces keep coming out. I mean, how much do you look at positive mail? It works because that's what people are paying attention to, and that's why we see more of it. So until we can convince the body politic that, you know, you should throw away all that negative stuff, but just look at the stuff that's positive about the candidate. Until we can convince the body politic of that, we're going to have to figure out how to respond effectively. And then I think that we shoot ourselves sometimes. You know, I've already alluded to the fact that I think the party is you know, the purpose of a party is to try and win. To do that, we have to get more votes than others. I mean, that's the bottom line. You have to get more votes. And most of the country really isn't with us on some things that we can all make a philosophical case for. And so I'm going to throw some things out. I got into trouble when I did this in Oregon because then it got on a Facebook page and whatever. But I'm going to do it anyhow. Most of the country isn't really with us, at least on the surface, until you have this long conversation with them on things like sex worker rights, full legalization of drugs, and things like that. And so if we want to win, we've got to figure out how to stay true to our principles without convincing the general public who cast the ballots that we're not, you know, batshit crazy, because some of them think that we are. Because, you know, why would you want to promote that stuff? And so this is going to be the great challenge from a messaging standpoint for us. You know, I was telling someone last night, I don't remember who, we were sitting at the bar, that you know, I could make the case for open borders. I can make the case for sex worker rights. I can make the case for, you know, for full drug legalization when I can stand and talk to someone one-on-one at the door. Okay, because you've got an extended period of time. You got, you know, however much time it takes to have this conversation, and they may not completely change their minds, but they at least don't think that I'm crazy. They say, okay, well, that makes some sense anyhow. The problem is that no candidate can talk to that many people for that extended period of time. And so, you know, so somehow we got to figure out how to you know, insulate ourselves a little bit from some of that stuff while still being true to our principles. And so, you know, we need to talk about it a lot. We need to have these conversations and figure out, you know, what can we do from a messaging standpoint to make sure that we don't hurt ourselves, or even more so hurt others. You know, if you're running a message campaign, good. You know, I think it's great to run message campaigns if you don't have any expectation of winning. I mean, the reality is our presidential and vice presidential candidates are going to be running message campaigns. They don't expect that they're going to get, you know, 270 electoral votes, it's just not likely. The big question is, you know, are those message campaigns going to hurt those candidates who are at, you know, running for school board or city council and running serious campaigns that might actually get elected? So we're going to have to figure out how to play that game over the next few years. So all in all, I would say this. You know, I'm really happy at being part of the Libertarian Party. I have no intention of leaving. I know that one high-profile person left earlier this year. I am not going to. I'm here for good. I'm here for life. People have asked me, you know, why don't you go back and run as a Republican for this? And no. I've been beat up enough by the Republicans. I have no desire to do it again, to be part of that system again. I believe that we ought to be, you know, who can speak after Alex? I mean, everybody loves Alex, and he's the happiest guy. He's a happy libertarian. But, you know, it is, I have great optimism for the future, because I see, as I go around to these states, I see people starting to pull together. I see that we're not really all so bitter. I was in Ohio a couple of weeks ago, and we had, there was a picture that I posted of Mike Shipley and myself and Aaron Pyle. Is that her last name? No. Yeah, Aaron Pyle. And you know, the three of us don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but it's a stylistic thing. You know, we got to quit. We got to quit looking at whether or not we agree or disagree on style, and instead say, okay, do we all want to push in the same direction? You know, and we do. We all want to push in the direction of liberty, and so we got to quit getting all bent out of shape over, you know, individual style. I can work with pretty much anyone. I think that the Libertarian Party has great potential. I think that the Democrats are fracturing themselves in ways that we can't even begin to understand yet. And I think the Republican Party is fracturing itself in ways that we can't even begin to understand yet. I think the Democratic Party is becoming more and more, you know, moving further and further to the left. The Republican Party is moving somewhere. I'm not really sure where. I'd like to say it's to the right, and it sort of is. It's sort of to the nationalist populist right. But it's a strange place. But you know, I'm a political scientist, and John has seen this. I'm not going to jump rope, but as a political scientist, I used to teach about when I teach American government classes. You know, political ideology simplified, and you have the right, and you have the left, and the argument was that somewhere in the center, okay, got the right and got the left, somewhere in the center, okay, is where all the Republicans and Democrats were. You know, you didn't have the communists and you didn't have the fascists. And you had the center. That's where most of the Americans were. Okay, and Republicans and Democrats were right of center. You know, Republicans were right of center. Democrats were left of center. I think we're seeing a fundamental change. We're seeing that the Republicans are moving further this way, and the Democrats are moving further this way. Pretty soon they're going to get to the end. There's not going to be any difference because it's not really left or right. It's one big circle, which means that all this area in the middle is there for us. Okay? Got a whole lot of people who believe in civil liberties. Got a whole lot of people who believe in economic liberty. And we just have to figure out a way to bring them into the fold and let them know, hey, you know, we're not the ones that are the extremists. We're not the ones that are trying to take things away from you. Come and join us. And that's something that I think that we all can do. I like to, I think I'm starting to run ahead of time. But what I like to do is always give everybody an opportunity to just kind of have a conversation. So if you've got any questions or you want something you want to talk about, let's toss some ideas around. So, thanks. You can sit down. Thank you. I appreciate it. Questions, comments, thoughts? Yes, sir.
In 2018, I ran for state senate in Missouri, and I had a couple of media outlets and some voters asked me point blank how long I had been a libertarian. And I told them 1996, and it kind of put it to bed. And I was just interested in your experience because I wanted to know if there had been a shift in people that had supported you as Republican versus Libertarian. Did people change their attitude toward you? Did they change their questions? Did they change the topics that concerned them?
2018 was a strange year. If you go back to 24, I actually got more votes in 2018 than I did in 2014. But we also had significantly higher voter turnout in 2018. And, you know, in 2016, when I made the switch, I actually sent out a letter to my donors in the district. I sent out a mass email to some 1,500 people in my district. I will tell you that within about 3 hours of sending out the email, I'd had about 150 responses, and 2 of them were negative. Most of the Republicans at the time that had, you know, supposedly voted for me in 2014 said, hey, you know, it's okay. We're good with that. You know, we know what you are. I mean, everybody kind of knew that I was I never made a secret of being a libertarian Republican. And so didn't have any problem with that. You know, Nebraska's part of the problem is the governor got mad and decided that it was his purpose in life to make sure that I didn't get reelected, which is ironic because actually they've got far more people who are who are they spent money on my race, which instead of spending it on, some races up in Omaha, which meant that he lost a couple of people that he really liked. And so I didn't notice much difference in response until some of those mailers started coming out. And then what I noticed is as I went door to door during the summer and fall, I got a few more doors closed on me. People who were Republicans who I know voted for me before, and I had a few people, not a lot, but a few people who called me a liar, called me traitor, called me, all sorts of things because the Republican Party had managed to convince people that I really was a terrible person. But it's interesting as well because there wasn't a Democrat in the race. It was me and a Republican, and so I went to a lot of Democrat doors, and I won an area commandingly this last time that I had lost before because it was a Democrat area, and the Democrats decided to vote for me because they liked me better because they found out that they liked the idea of somebody who would stand up to the governor. So, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. I can't say for sure. Most people, I still have people coming. I do these political brews once a month in my town. Started it 2 years ago, having state office holders and local office holders come to my community, and we just have it's like an open mic night at a local bar, and people are still coming out for those. So, I think. It was a strange set of circumstances, kind of this Trumpian populism, and then we have we have some pretty terrible property tax problems in Nebraska that the perception was that I hadn't done enough to fix, which they didn't get anything done this session either, so I don't feel so bad. What else? Yes, sir.
I've seen that from another political science professor, the description of Republican Democrats being basically centric parties and third parties being philosophical based parties. And that, on the bell curve, Republicans and Democrats line up towards the center in order to get the plurality of the votes. And do you really see in the future that they're not going to correct their behavior if they start to lose races because they're not lining up with the center?
I don't know. I'm not seeing any signs of it yet. I mean, they might. There may be some, although the question is, where's the center? And will people get engaged? I mean, I think we have a big group of in people that like liberty of some sort. And if we can convince them that neither the Republicans or the Democrats are playing well with them. I mean, I think I've seen the bell curve thing as well, and it's essentially what we're talking about with my rope. But I think that we got to quit looking at it as a straight, a real bell curve, because I do think that at some point you connect in the middle. And then you have what they refer to as realignments, if I'm going to turn into a political scientist. They have realignments. The Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party of 1980, and it's not, and the Republican Party of 1980 was not the Republican Party of 1952. So parties change. They change, and Democrats have done the same thing. I mean, the Democrats who were the pro-civil liberties and pro-civil rights party of the 60s and 70s, before that, were the the pro-states' rights parties in the 40s and 50s. So you have these realignments of ideas, and I think we're probably in the midst of that. I've thought this for a while, that we might be kind of easing into a realignment. Sometimes you have a critical election, what they refer to as a critical election, that will change things drastically. 2016 might have been a critical election, and we're just still in the midst of it. I think that 2020, based on what I'm seeing from the Democrats so far, if you've got Trump versus that crowd, somebody in that crowd, you're going to have you're going to have a lot of people who aren't totally comfortable with that, and that's where I think that it's important for us to be taking our message of liberty, and we call both sides out. not, and that's one of the things that we sometimes aren't always good at doing. But yeah, I think that will they self-correct? Maybe, although I think a lot of times what happens is you have the names, but you have such changing ideas, and it may be time for the names to go away, the parties themselves to go away. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, do you think if we were doing targeted voting, that reluctant voters and rare voters would be the ones to try to activate into the libertarian sphere, or would it be people who are not involved at all, or would it be better to go after people who definitely vote but just vote wrong now?
Yeah. That's tough to say. In 2018, I would have said, you know, the targeting that we should be, and that the policy that we took was you target the people who are the likely voters. With a message, you know, the 3x4s and the 4x4s that have voted, you know, most of the elections in the last few years. But we had a huge number of people who turned out who hadn't before. And so there may be an opening, and how we find them, how we decide which ones they are, you know, which ones they are, because you got all these people who haven't voted in a single election in the last 4 election cycles who all of a sudden turned out. And so I don't know how you decide who those are in terms of targeting them, because there are still a lot of them that didn't vote, you know, and so that's the trick, and one of the reasons why I would argue that having the money for, you know, on local races, the money for a big mail program is a good thing, because you don't necessarily want to spend all your time knocking on the doors of people who aren't going to show up, but it's nice to at least get the word out and, you know, see if you can drag them in a little bit. You know, politics is a time-intensive game, and you know, you got to have the volunteers and you've got to have the willingness to continue to talk to people. Okay, yeah, here we go. How much time do we have? 5 minutes. Okay.
Before I ask my question, I just got to point out, I got some feedback from online, that they can't hear the questions of the audience. I don't know if this mic works. Is this podium here for audience questions?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Makes it much more formal.
Just for the showbiz. I just had a question. Do you have any tips if you're campaigning in a small local race, how to get media attention without seeming crazy? Is there things that you can say in a press release or other such things to get some media attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, you know, it depends on how small. If you're talking about a small municipality or a school board race or something like that, if you've got a local newspaper or a local radio station, I think it's a great idea just to go in and say hi to the news director. You know, don't even, you know, before you do anything else, just go in and say hi. You know, just introduce yourself. Tell them that, you know, you were in the neighborhood and just wanted to stop by and say hi, and that they'll probably start seeing some things from your campaign occasionally. And then when you start looking at your press releases, if you're running a local race, focus on local issues. That's really important. You know, too often, I think that, you know, as libertarians, we just want, it's like we want to vomit everything out. You know, we want to just, you know, everything that there is in our platform, we want to tell everybody. And, you know, the vast majority of things, if you're running for school board, who cares what you think about sex worker rights? I mean, you know, what you say if somebody, you know, on the odd occasion that somebody asks you about it, say, well, I really don't have anything to say about that, because that's, you know, that's not an issue that I would deal with on the school board. You know, try to turn it back on them. You know, as a teenager, I'm telling on myself. Okay, I was a political nerd, but I was at a state teenage Republican convention in 1976, I think, or 78, when we were running. We had a governor's race going on. Might have been 77, and one of the candidates was there. Okay, now for those of you who are old enough to remember, there were some things going on at the time. Jimmy Carter was in office. Reagan was running, and one of the big issues was the Panama Canal thing. Okay, now I, in my infinite wisdom, had been paying attention to national races, but didn't know squat about state, right? And I asked this gubernatorial candidate that came to visit us. I said, "So, what would you do about the Panama Canal?" And he was very kind. Didn't make me feel stupid, although I did. But he didn't try to make me feel stupid. He said, "Well, you know, as governor, I really wouldn't have much to say about that. That's really a federal issue." And I said, "Oh, okay." You know, so I mean, you don't have to talk about everything. You know, and find your issue. Talk about the few things that you really can talk about from a libertarian perspective. Cecil.
I ran for county commissioner here in Greene County in Missouri in 2016, and it's the eastern half of Greene County. And I ran against a Republican like you did in your race, and I pulled in 21% of the vote and had no advertising. Now, you had made mention about running for local offices. Now, in cases like that, yard signs, I've heard people say yard signs don't do nothing, but I believe in my case, it may have actually turned more votes out in my favor.
Yeah, I think I have a love-hate relationship with yard signs because they're so expensive. It costs a lot of money. I think it's good. And I came around to this. We way under-ordered for the primary in terms of yard signs. I just didn't want to do it again. They're just such a pain. And my campaign manager for the general election said, "No, we got to have yard signs." And he was gung-ho on yard signs. I mean, there's a fine line between, you know, oversaturation and having enough. You want to have a presence, I think. You want to let people know that you're out there and that they see your name occasionally. But I think, you know, I've never seen a sign vote. And so, you know, so I would say, you know, figure out what you can reasonably use, you know, what you can reasonably get rid of. And if you're out canvassing, that's an easy way to say, you know, somebody likes you. Well, would it be okay if I put a yard sign here? And pick strategically where you're going to put your yard signs. Put them on corners. Put them on streets that are busy. Don't put them in cul-de-sacs because nobody's going to drive back there. So. Okay, looks like we're done, right? Okay, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Laura. Okay, this is a good time for a 10-minute break. We'll be back in break. We're going to on the screen there. We'll hear from Libertarian election judges, ranked choice voting, stop taxing our property, and a local affiliate panel with John Phillips and Cecil Entz. So 10 minutes, 7 if you can make it, but 10-minute break here. We'll meet back here in 10 minutes. Please be prompt. We were ahead of schedule, and now we're behind schedule. So 10 minutes, right back here. Thank you. And we'll get things going in about 60 seconds.
Check 1 2 3 4 1 2. One, two, three. One, two, three, four, five. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4 5 5. 1 2. One, two.
Thank you. And Cecil. Cecil. All right, thank you all. I hope that break was long enough. We'll have a couple more. Keep you going here. Our next break will be for lunch. That'll be in about an hour and a half, so feel free to go on. Our next presenter here is going to be speaking about Libertarian election judges. It's Cecil Ince. Cecil Ince is an actor and a film producer from here in Springfield. In 2016, Cecil ran for President of the United States, seeking the Libertarian Party nomination. He is this year's state convention chair, and I think you can agree he's done a great job. Please welcome Cecil Ince. While Cecil's making his way up, since we are Facebook Live, we've got this streaming out on Facebook, the camera over here, and all the audio. So I'm going to try to wander around with the microphone if you have questions for the rest of the day. But if I can't get to you or something's the podium here will be hot all day. Please ask your questions to a microphone so that people who are watching online can hear your question. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Cecil Ince. I actually am a Libertarian election judge that serves here in Greene County, Missouri. I represent the Libertarian Party. If you don't know what what election judge is, an election judge is a poll worker. I've received a phone call one day, and a gentleman here in Missouri had gone to the polling place. And when he got up to the table and asked for a Libertarian ballot, there was none on the table. They had to go back over to the other table behind them, grab the packet, and open it up to give him one. My response to such inquiries is, why don't you go file to be a Libertarian election judge? This is new to the Libertarian Party. You know, we've been so ingrained in being a third party, we fail to realize that we've maintained ballot access, which was a great opportunity. What was it, 96, that we achieved our 2%? If you're a county chair, I suggest you get one of these. It's the Missouri the Missouri election laws. And in here gives specific instructions on not just state committees, but county committees. But it also talks about the election judges. And it talks about two types of party: established and major party. Now, the major parties, we know who they are. Those are the R's and the D's. But on the the established party status, you have to have 2% of the vote in order to have minor party status, which means libertarians in every county can walk into your election authority or your county clerk's office and sign up to be an election judge. You can be compensated if you have problems accepting that check from your county seat. You can donate it to your county party or the state party, or donate it to charity, whatever you want to do with it. But the purpose of an election judge is to watch the other parties. You know, typically, we're currently allowing Republicans and Democrats to handle the ballots we cast. Okay? They're watching each other so that the Republicans make sure they have a fair election, and the Democrats are watching the Republicans to make sure they have a fair election. We need libertarians there to make sure that the libertarian voter gets his ballot or her ballot, to make sure that they're doing their job and that we do our job as election judges. Now, you will run into some problems here. The two-party duopoly, if you will, has been so ingrained in the fact that no other party has been an established party in the state of Missouri, that you go to your clerk's office or you go to your election authority and you say, I want to register as a libertarian election judge. And they hand you a card, or they ask you what party you are, and on the card or on even the websites, and this has been on the Missouri State website, it says Republican or Democrat. There is no space for other. We've been very fortunate here in Greene County that our election judge cards for signing up say other, because Shane Schuler, the Greene County clerk, has had independent election judges serving. And I believe Greens and constitutional parties have, when they have their 2%, have qualified for that as well, but I don't know if any of them have served. Here in Greene County, I served as an election judge during the 2016 election. I was running for office in the eastern half of Greene County, but I got to serve in the western half where I was not on the ballot. And I got to be there to get people signed in to make sure that the laws were being observed and that the ballots were handled properly. And it's a great experience, because now in the presidential preference race, I'm hoping to be certified as a challenger, which is volunteer completely. I'm representing libertarians of Greene County at our central polling locations, and I will be, if there's any question of the law, I would bring it up to the election judges and say, this is not right. I cannot talk to the voter. And these are things that I've learned serving as an election judge. And so if you want to be able to be an effective challenger or an effective watcher, I really suggest you go and you serve as an election judge. I've reported to the Secretary of State's office, their Integrities Division, about the lack of compliance with the law whenever it comes to registering online. I haven't recently checked the website, but hopefully they have corrected that. If not, I will be filing a formal complaint this year with the Integrities Division. And from there, I will take it to the media if the states don't come into compliance. I'm also looking at, the state comes into compliance. I'm also looking at sending out a letter to every county clerk and election authority in the state, asking them to be in compliance with this section of the Missouri state law. So we can serve as election judges. We can be there at the polling place, making sure other libertarians get their ballots, and that the Republicans and the Democrats do their job properly, and that we have fair and not just bipartisan, but we have fair representation in the ballot, in the voting booth. So those are some things you'll run into. You can also go through your county chair. County chair can go to your county clerk and put your name down on the list to serve as an election judge. You can also, if you have any problems, you can contact me, or you can contact our executive director and or the state chair, and we will address the issue the best we can. If you really want to serve and represent the Libertarian Party, making sure that we have fair elections at our polling places, this is how we do that. And this is just one way we can serve and make sure that we have Libertarians represented everywhere in the state. So with that, I'll open up for questions. Please address the mic.
Did you make money whenever you were an election judge?
Yes, I got paid.
How much did you make?
I believe it was $130 for the day. You work like a 12-hour day, and they pay you for training, and they pay you for the full day, or 160. What was it?
It was 180 on 2016. Then this last, what I forget, the primary, we got paid 200 because I've been an election judge 2 times so far.
As a Libertarian? Oh. Yes, yeah, 180. So yeah, he is correct. I did get paid.
They didn't even give us a choice of a Libertarian. It was either Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
You couldn't. They didn't even. I didn't even know that you could.
And see, that's the problem we face. They read the law and they overlook the section where it says that there could be 2 supervisor judges, which have to be of the major party, which is a Republican and a Democrat, when they do it in a bipartisan manner. But the established parties, there can be 2. Okay, so if there's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, there can be 2 Libertarians at least, at the most. There can't be any more than there is of the other party. Okay, I've served and worked with an independent. We were signing the ballots together, and then I turn over here and there's a Democrat and we're signing the ballots together. And when we were counting ballots together, we did it in a bipartisan manner. But I could not do it with another Libertarian. I'd have to do it with another other party. So, any other questions?
All right, thank you, Cecil. Okay, our next presenter will be talking about ranked choice voting and proportional representation. Winston Apple is a retired civics and economics teacher, the founder of Government by the People, and a strong believer in individual liberty and genuine democracy. He's a lifelong independent voter. Who joined the Democratic Party in 2014 when he decided to run for office. Winston is a member of the Democratic Party who believes that we need to break away from the duopoly by implementing proportional representation or ranked choice voting and give voters more candidates and more parties in which to choose from. Winston Apple, not here? All right. Greg Talapik, would you like to talk to us about ranked choice voting or proportional representation? As much time as you can take. What I kind of feel strongly about proportional representation as Greg gathers his notes, I will, and I'll tell you that it's going to be our #1 push starting at the end of this day. It's my intention to run for chair again, and it's going to be Greg and our focus. If we make chair and he makes executive director, it will be our #1 focus starting this afternoon and starting this evening. It's already been a #1 focus to focus on proportional representation, that every vote counts. And I've thought about this in a lot of ways, that it's not just a libertarian or a third party opportunity for us to break through. It actually is a strong thing for the D's and the R's. If you happen to be in downtown St. Louis and there's not a Republican ever going to get elected there, well, then there's not a Republican in downtown St. Louis that's ever going to be represented. It's the Republicans' interest to proportional representation so that the number of Republicans that cast votes in downtown St. Louis has a representative that goes in and has a say to speak for them. So it's not just something that not a hurdle that the Libertarians have to get over in order to have it, to give us a chance. It is in everybody's interest, including the D's and the R's, to think strongly about proportional representation, especially in districts, state and national districts where people are not getting fair representation and where people's votes are just not counting or not meaning. So if you're ready, Greg, we can fill in for Winston. Yeah, but 15, 20 minutes, or as long as you want to go. We can figure it out. Yeah. Up there, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And I'm sorry, I'm a little stumped now, helping with your name. Yeah, Larry, thank you. That's right. Yeah. Okay. And so I'm going to avail myself of your offer to take up some of this time. But I'll begin by apologizing in advance to those of you who are tired of hearing me talk about proportional representation. I know this is the drum that I just will not quit beating, and so I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing this, but I don't think there's any other way to get Libertarians elected. And building on what Laura said, I mean, she said, why are you doing this if you don't want to get elected? And I have had a bit of an epiphany. I have started attending a second church, and this past summer, not this summer, but summer of 2018, the minister there was doing his sermons on leadership. And he mentioned something about something that really stuck with me, and that every organization, if they don't, they should have a mission statement. And I, for myself, want our mission statement to be get Libertarians elected. A good mission statement, according to a guy I think named Kevin Starr, is no more than 8 words, and it begins with a subject, and it has as an object something that can be measured, and that is a measurable result. You know, how many Libertarians did you get elected? I mean, that is the one metric that I think is should be of most importance to us. That's what the Republicans and the Democrats are asking. How many seats do you have in your state legislature? And so, I mean, am I crazy? Do we not deserve representation? You know, are we going to accept the fact that we don't get any representation in our system? Am I wrong? If we've got 163 seats in our state house, I'm kind of thinking that maybe about 10% of the population really is totally on board with Libertarians, open borders, legalized prostitution, and legal heroin. I think about 10% of the population is probably already on board with all of these things. And we don't need to soft pedal that message, because organizations whose job it is to try to spread the word are doing a great job. The Cato Institute. Libertarianism is a philosophical movement. We are the political arm of a philosophical movement, and the purpose of a political organization is to get Libertarians elected. And so I'm not asking you now to make this our mission statement. I may at the next convention try to propose that we get this into our bylaws, that it is our mission to get Libertarians elected. But I will ask you now, please, even if you can't sign on to this, and because it's not as though I have not already assailed almost every individual in this room with this concept. If I can't get you to sign on to it, I would just ask you, please, don't fight me on it. And if, like Jim Higgins, who can't be here, he and LaDonna couldn't make it today. There are many people who could not be here. But I did talk to Jim, and he's not. LaDonna's, totally on board with proportional representation. Jim's not. He kind of feels like, well, our job is to go out there and spread the libertarian message, and I think that we can do that running for office. It's corollary or ancillary to the whole process. You spread your message. But I really do feel like our mission, unlike the Cato Institution and other educational organizations, is to get libertarians elected, and not to school boards. Because what the libertarian going to do on a school board? You might vote to spend a little less money. Have some sense about how you spend money, but you're a libertarian on a school board isn't going to say, well, let's have free market education. It's just, all you're going to do is just tick people off. And also, what I got from that church deal, besides that we should have a mission statement, is that you should have a vision. And a mission and a vision are not necessarily the same things. This is some woman named Laura, I've lost her name, Laura Bergman or something like that. Anyway, this is kind of a program that she peddles, and it makes a lot of sense, though, that a vision is a compelling image of an achievable future. And I think it's compelling enough to think that we would have, that there were, without even convincing a single another person in Missouri of the rationality and the benefits to society of libertarianism, that if we had proportional representation, that instantly there would be 16 state reps in our legislature. So I think that's compelling. But I think that I need to, if I could do anything, it would be to convey a sense that it is achievable, that we can do it. And I think ranked choice voting, having passed in Maine, is good. Not that it's going to electing libertarians, but it has communicated to people, it's got it in their minds that, well, it's not set in stone. It may be in our Constitution, but we can change how we elect people. And as Bill said earlier, I think a good one-liner is that it's not good enough just to count every vote. We need to make every vote count. And I think that you will find that we have allies. Winston Apple, I'm sorry he can't be here because there's really, he and, I don't know, I'm spacing out on your name. Help, Larry Bradley, okay. He's right over here with this vendor here, Better Ballots, so we have allies. I live in a totally Republican district. I mean, and it has occurred to me, it's been another bit of an epiphany for me, that there are some fine minds housed in the bodies of Democrats where I live. But they will never, not in the foreseeable future, will any of them get to sit on our state legislature, because we do not elect Democrats in my district. There are some fine minds that reside in the bodies of Republicans in St. Louis City, but they may not go to the state legislature because they do not elect Republicans. And if you really want to have a much better legislative body, you get the cream of the crop. You let the cream float to the top, and you skim them off of the top, and you put them in your state legislature instead of finding somebody, the best person who calls himself a Republican or a Democrat in a 35,000 seat district. So it is achievable. We have allies. There are fair-minded people all across the state who realize that there is a better way to do democracy, that it is not enough just to count all the votes. We've got to make every vote count. And if you want to, it's no panacea, certainly. There are plenty of screwed-up countries that use it, but virtually every country in the world uses some form of proportional representation to elect at least one of their legislative bodies. We in Ghana, I think, and maybe Canada are the three countries that don't. How much time have I got? How much time?
Winston just walked in.
Oh, there you are, Winston. Okay. Well, I'm gonna. Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'm going to give it to you, Winston. Thank you, and I'll blather on at the executive committee meeting. Thank you all.
Oh, I'm not using a projector. I just had some notes here. It should be here. How's everybody doing today? All right. Well, that's strange. Okay. I guess I don't have notes. I will rely on my memory. Well, obviously I'm here to talk about the petition that I have filed for proportional representation in Missouri. And I was shocked a while back, speaking to some members of the Green Party, that they didn't quite understand how that would help them. I don't think we'll have the same problem with this group, I assume. The bottom line, and I don't think I need to say too much about proportional representation, but if I do, I'll be happy to. It's in place in 94 countries around the world. 85 of them use an ordered party list system. And basically, I'll give you the details of the proposal as I've filed it. And I know Greg and I have talked, and you can nitpick this thing to death. And there's all different, slightly different variations of proportional representation in different places. But the essence of it is that a political party should be represented in a legislative body in proportion to the percentage of the electorate that they represent. And I trust I'll have no problem getting agreement with the fact that there are a lot more people in this country who agree with the libertarian philosophy than are represented percentage-wise in Congress or any of the state legislatures. This country was founded on the idea that the primary responsibility of government is to protect our natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I am, as probably maybe has already been mentioned, I'm a member of the Democratic National Committee, but I am a small L libertarian, very much so. And I favor genuine democracy. I think that the two-party system does not serve us well. It is too easy to corrupt, and it does a very poor job of representing the will of the people. I'm very proud of our Missouri Constitution, which makes it clear in Article 1, Section 1, the very first thing the Constitution says is that government is founded upon the will of the people, and that is the only legitimate basis for government. And the big advantage of proportional representation, as has been argued for hundreds of years, is that it more accurately reflects the total will of the people. So the big question at this point is, how do we get it done? And I think that we have one thing that you have to say about the U.S. Constitution, for better or worse, it's very difficult to amend. And so putting proportional representation in place in Congress is going to be a major challenge. And so, like many reforms that have come from the people up, I think we have to do this on a state-by-state basis. Missouri is one of the easier states to get things on the ballot and passed. I've heard we generally rank about in the top 7 or 8 in that regard. But I also know the Libertarian Party has a national presence, and there are 23 other states with some form of initiative. I don't know if Missouri's the best state for this or not right now. I know that there's a lot of education required. I appreciate Larry Bradley helping with that educational task. I don't know if it's been mentioned already, but Larry had an opinion piece about ranked choice voting published in the Kansas City Star a couple days ago. And I can tell you two things when you're out gathering signatures, and this will be my third go-around gathering signatures for a petition for proportional representation. you'll find that if you try to explain it to people, their faces scrunch up pretty good. It's very different from what people are used to. And then at some point they get it, and you'll see the light bulb go off and a big smile on their face, and they're ready to sign the petition. I've found the shorter way to get someone to file the petition, if you're moving through a crowd and want to get as many signatures as possible, is simply to say this will break the two-party system and you'll have more than two parties to choose from. That is something that an overwhelming majority of Americans want. And frankly, most of them don't care that much about the details. But the details of the proposal here in Missouri are this. The state House of Representatives would be elected with 10 members from each district. And in the primary election, you would choose the ballot of the party of your choice. So someone taking a Libertarian Party ballot might see 5, 10, 15 names in each congressional district. The top 10 would go onto a list in order of the number of votes received. The candidate that gets the most votes is listed first, second most second, etc. In the general election, and the same thing, by the way, for the state Senate, the size of the Senate would remain where it's at 34, with 17 members elected every 2 years for a 4-year term, just like we do now. But state senators would be elected statewide, no districts, at large. That means that to get a seat in the state Senate, you would need approximately 5.88% of the vote statewide. To get a seat in the Missouri House, you would need at least 10% of the vote in any one of the 8 congressional districts. And so then in the general election, voters would vote for a party rather than a candidate unless they wish to vote for an independent or write-in candidate. So if the Libertarian Party got 10% of the vote in the 7th congressional district, you'd get a seat in the General Assembly. If you got 20% of the vote, you'd get 2 of the 10 seats in a district. I ran the numbers, the last 2 elections I've done this. When I ran the numbers for 2018, I used the U.S. Senate and auditor races to come up with the stand-in for a party vote for the Senate, and I used the 8 congressional races as stand-ins for voting for a party in each congressional district. And I found that it changed the numbers pretty appreciably. The one that I hope will be of most interest to you is that had Craig O'Dear not run as for the state Senate, I used his numbers for the U.S. Senate, and had he run for the state Senate and gotten the same number of votes that he got, which I think is probably unlikely, that he would have gotten as many votes, he would have gotten the 17th seat. But instead, it would have been 8 Democrats, 8 Republicans, and 1 Libertarian in the state Senate. That's what the numbers you got in an election where most people feel the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party have no realistic chance of winning and are therefore, in my opinion, much less likely to vote for a minor party or independent candidate. So I would anticipate that if we got this on the ballot and passed, the Libertarian Party would get multiple seats in the state Senate and in the Missouri House. You'd have seats in the legislature where you could introduce legislation, have a vote on legislation, and I think the big advantage of proportional representation and the ordered party list system over, say, ranked choice voting with multiple member districts, which is what Fair Vote and some other organizations favor. The big advantage is that in the general election, the focus then is on party platforms. And I probably don't have to tell you the average voter in the United States today has no idea what's in any of the party platforms. party platforms are largely ignored and not read, and I think that is to our detriment. Now, this is the retired civics teacher talking at this point, but I can tell you that a party's platform should matter, and it should influence what the individual candidates that get elected from that party say and do. We have, especially with the only two parties, it's especially critical because you got to pick one or the other for the most part. But I'm part of a very small group of people. It's an easy group to join. I've read not just the Democratic Party platform and the Republican Party platform, but I do read the Libertarian Party platform every 4 years. I do read the Green Party platform and the Constitution Party platform. And anyone who reads through all those platforms becomes an official member of a group I call Gluttons for Punishment. But I can tell you, you learn a lot. And I agree with almost everything in the Libertarian Party platform. And I don't think that disqualifies you from being a Democrat or a Republican. I think there's a strong group within each party that realizes that personal liberty, individual freedom, is an important part of what our country has to offer us as citizens. And I think that that's the best part of the government. That's the best part of what government has to offer. I do want to mention that there are a couple of things that people can do as individuals to help get petitions on the ballot. The first one is to sign it. That's the easiest. And then to help gather signatures or to make a financial contribution. Now, I want to emphasize that I filed this, but this is not going to happen just with me. We need thousands of people involved across Missouri, and this is being organized as a group of labor unions, student groups. I hope the Green Party will get actively involved, but any contributions or any work you do can be done through the Libertarian Party. We need to communicate, we need to coordinate, we need to work together with whatever groups get involved, and a lot of people will get involved just as individuals. But the thing I want to emphasize with signing petitions, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, and I'm guessing most of you have, and you look at the bottom where they signed their names, pledging their lives and their sacred honor, the men that signed the Declaration of Independence were signing their own death warrants if we had not won the Revolutionary War. They would have been hung as traitors. There's not nearly that level of risk involved in signing a petition for proportional representation. And so I think we've got to really emphasize, however, that the American Revolution, and especially the Constitution, as great as it is, and I think the preamble is really good, but when you get into the details, you find that it's set up a system that's not terribly democratic. The people were given the House of Representatives, but to protect the rights of the minority, which in this case was wealthy white males, they put a lot of things in there. The Senate can block what the House does. The President can veto it. The Supreme Court can declare it unconstitutional. We've got some work to do if we want to elect a government that's truly going to represent we the people. And so I want to close my remarks and then open it up to questions and a discussion. I mentioned this to Greg on the phone. As a lifelong student of history and aware of what we're doing here, the odds of success may be fairly long. They were pretty long when a ragtag bunch of members of the Continental Army took on the most powerful army in the world and all the mercenaries they could hire. But if we succeed, I mean, frankly, I get a little emotional when I think about the fact that working together, if enough of us work together and we get this on the ballot, I believe it will pass. the educational process will ramp up at that point. If all of a sudden people in Missouri or any other state are going to vote on this, they'll learn about it. And when they learn about it, they'll be impressed. And when we get this put in place in one state, just one somewhere, and personally, as a lifelong resident of the state of Missouri, I hope it's us, but if it's somewhere else, I will predict this with almost absolute certainty. If this is put into effect in a single state, and then people see how this system works, and that they do have more than 2 viable parties to choose from all of a sudden, and they can vote for whatever party best represents them with no fear of their vote being wasted, the other states will want to get on board. And this will pass in other states with the initiative in very short order. And then it'll spread out to the states without the initiative, because people will not vote for candidates who do not support genuine democracy. And if we pull this off, we will have made history.
Question? Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions for Winston? Hold on one second, please. Wait for the online.
I just have a question related to you as a civics teacher. Is how did the party structure become a monopoly? You know, when President Washington was elected, there were no parties.
And he warned of the dangers.
Well, after he retired, after 2 terms, I think that's when the Federalists, there was one side, and the Jeffersonians on the other side.
Right.
And they formed political parties. And now it's a monopoly. And I'm wondering
A duopoly.
Huh?
A duopoly. 2 parties.
Yeah, duopoly. You call it that, but I'd say it's a monopoly on the system.
Right.
I'm wondering, how did it get ingrained into the law, like Missouri law, that they exclude everybody else? And I don't know if you want to talk about that or discuss it, but I think you have to go to the source if you're going to turn it
Well,
over.
and I can tell you, if you read, and I highly recommend this book to any of you who have not read it, and most people have not. It's a pretty obscure book. It's just Madison's notes on the Federal Convention. And it's the notes that James Madison took while they were in secret meetings debating and writing the U.S. Constitution. And you'll see that they modeled it heavily on the British system. Alexander Hamilton, in particular, was very complimentary of the British system, and so the bicameral legislature and the executive and everything else. But to answer your question very directly, the most impressive work done on that question was done by a French sociologist named Maurice Duverger. And if you look up online, you can Google Duverger's law, Duverger''. It looks like Duverger's, but it's Duverger's law. You'll see he did extensive research in the 1950s and 1960s, and he found that governments with a winner-take-all system and single-member districts are almost inevitably two-party systems. And he specifically recommended proportional representation as the cure for that limitation on people's choices. So Duverger's law will give you the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, are you familiar with Why America Stopped Voting by Mark L. Kornbluth?
No.
He goes into immense detail on the state election laws that changed in the late 19th and early 20th century, and documents the effect that had on election competitiveness and on voter turnout, and it's very impressive. Also, he has anecdotal stories about how local political groups, local community civic involvement, where people would have competitive barbecues and flagpole raisings and things like that. People were much more engaged when their votes mattered more, and political parties weren't guaranteed a duopoly.
For anyone who likes short videos better than books, you can also go to the represent.us website, represent.us. And if you have to kind of look around a little bit, but they have a video that talks about a 20-year study done at Stanford University, where they looked at the correlation between the percentage of citizens wanting a bill to pass and the likelihood of that bill passing. And if you've read the book that you read probably describes this, there's almost no influence at all. If 0% of the voters want a bill, it's got about a 32% chance of passing. If 100% want it, 32% chance of passing. Now, ideally, it would be a 45-degree line, 50%, 50%, 25, 25, 75, 75. In reality, there is a line that's closer. It's not 45 degrees, but it's closer, and that's what the people who give lots of money to the parties want. So we literally have a plutocracy in that sense. Larry.
To offer another book that's interesting in this regard of how do we get where we are now. There's a book called Just How Stupid Are We? Okay? And that book, the answer is pretty darn stupid. Okay? And one of the things the author argues in that is that what took us away from voting for parties, Winston, okay, which is exactly what you're saying, and to voting on individuals was television. Because even with radio, people, they still had that alliance with the party and voted based on what the party presented as, this is what we are going to do, not what. But when we started getting television, the Nixon-Kennedy debate, et cetera, people started saying, well, I can see them right here on the screen, and I can see the expression on their face, and I can look at their eyes. I don't need a party to tell me how to vote. And we begin to get into this thing of, and you listen to it today when we have these people running. You vote for me, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Well, no. Obviously, we have a system here. You got to have a majority of the vote in the House. You got to have a majority of the vote in the Senate, and a president has to sign off on a bill for it to happen. So we don't vote for a boss of bosses. We don't vote for a dictatorship. But the combination of television and the fact now today also that we have an education system that de-emphasizes civics that you taught, Winston. Okay, and so we have young people who don't understand that system. They think we're voting for a boss of bosses, and that whatever the president says goes. And it's also why we have people who don't show up for the off-year elections because, well, I got the president I want, so it must be okay. And no. Then you have that switch over in the House because of dissatisfaction, and you lose all momentum. Sorry to rant.
All right.
And to follow up on that very briefly, if you notice, there's a real regular phenomenon that whoever gets elected president often has majorities in both the Senate and the House for 2 years, and then it goes away. And the reason it goes away is just what Larry was talking about. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, vote for me, and this will happen and that'll happen. And then it gets into Congress where gridlock is the order of the day, and you don't deliver, and 2 years later they say, well, to heck with you, we're voting for the other guys. And so we go back and forth and back and forth.
One more short question.
Okay.
Short question.
I'm from Oklahoma. My name's Chris Powell, and I'm just visiting here today. So maybe everybody else knows this, but how many signatures do you need to get this on the ballot? What's the time frame that you can gather the signatures? What's that? All that good stuff.
Okay, and let me mention that Oklahoma has the initiative as an option as well. So you can take this back home with you. In Missouri, you need to get, for a constitutional amendment, which this is, you need to get 8% of the signatures of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election. That comes out to roughly, now, and that's in 6 of the 8 congressional districts. It has to be at least 2/3, so when we had 9 districts, it was 6. We're down to 8, it's still 6. So in 6 of the 8 districts in Missouri, you have to get 8% of the voters who, based on the total that voted in the 2016 gubernatorial election. That works out to at least 156,000 legitimate votes. We have until May 3rd, 2020 to gather those signatures. If enough signatures are gathered by May 20th, May 3rd, 2020, it will be on the ballot on November 3rd, 2020. And I do want to emphasize, of course, everyone knows you've got to get far more than that number of signatures because they're going to throw a certain percentage of them out. But assuming that you gather enough valid signatures, the government has no choice. It goes on the ballot. And if it wins, the Missouri Constitution is amended. In effect, I mean, it might take 200,000 of us to do it instead of 55 people who wrote the U.S. Constitution. But we literally, if we get 200,000 of our fellow Missourians, 8% of our fellow voters in Missouri to agree with us, we can change the Missouri Constitution. We can make the government of the state of Missouri the envy of 49 other states because we will put a system in place that genuinely represents the will of the people. And I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Is Gary Nolan here? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is going to be talking to us about stop taxing our property. Gary P. Nolan is an American Talk radio host, so he'll probably have a little better voice than I do, and a former candidate for the Libertarian Party nomination for President of the United States. From 1994 to 1998, Nolan hosted a USA Radio Daily on USA Radio Network. From 1998 to 2002, he hosted Nolan at Night on 65 U.S. affiliates and the Radio America Network. Please welcome Gary P. Nolan. Thank you, Gary.
Let me up here.
Please, please.
Sounds like it's giving way under the crushing weight, doesn't it? Let me, before I start my talk, because the hierarchy of the Libertarian Party of the state of Missouri is in the room, my program is regionally syndicated. We're on 3 stations. We can be heard from Lake of the Ozarks, Jefferson City, Columbia. The Columbia station carries us almost into Kansas City. And I almost never hear from Libertarian candidates who are running for office. So if you will kindly tell any reasonable Libertarian candidate that's running for office, statewide in particular, to call me, and I'll put them on the program, and hopefully we'll get them some money and some publicity and get them up front. I might point out that Austin Peterson came on my program regularly, and I believe in Boone County, he was number 2, and I think it was the highest rank that he got in all of the state of Missouri. I want to support Libertarian candidates. I want them to come knock on my door because I'm going to let them in and I'm going to give them publicity. So if you guys will do that, I'd appreciate it. Now, why I'm here. A couple of years ago, 2014 to be exact, prior to that, I'd been leasing cars. And if you lease a car from Ford Motor Credit, they put that personal property tax in the price of the lease payment. And I didn't realize it was there. A certain lack of perspicacity on my part, I know. But in 2014, I decided I wasn't going to lease anymore. I was just going to buy a car. And so I went to my local Dodge dealer and I bought a car and I paid the tax for it. Well, just before Christmas the following year, I got a bill for $500 and some. I was stunned. I thought maybe they made a mistake. I paid the tax. And that's when I found out about the personal property tax. So I mentioned this on my broadcast and the phone started lighting up. And I said, I hate this tax. This is stupid. Well, in talk radio, you try not to hit one topic for too long. You want to move on. For 2 hours, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. They wanted to get rid of the personal property tax. So I had the legislation drawn up. gave it to the Secretary of State, got his approval, went to the Attorney General, got his approval, they scored it, we got our ballot language, we're good to go. How many of you would like to get rid of the personal property tax in the state of Missouri? I think the Libertarian Party should own this, and I'm willing to tag the Libertarian Party because I think this will pass if we get it on the ballot. I think this will happen. Now, the reason I'm here today is more than just to tell you about it. I need you to do me a favor. I need you to pretend you're Democrats and Republicans, and I need you to challenge me. I need you to find objections. I want you to think like they think so that I'm prepared when we make the major push. So if you're prepared to do that, let me just explain. The ballot language simply says that nowhere in the state of Missouri, no city, no state, no the county, nobody can tax your personal property. This doesn't affect real estate. Maybe we'll do that another day. It's just your personal property. We don't say in this legislation that we're going to supplant it with another tax. I'll tell you what I did. I went out and I talked to some Democrats and some Republicans because I didn't want just me on this panel. And everybody said, well, I support this, but you have to write in the bill that every county will come up with their own alternative tax. Well, no. I'll let the people in the counties decide how they want to do this. Maybe they don't want to get rid of the tax, or maybe they want to get a sales tax or a real estate tax, or they don't want to supplant it at all. I wanted it to be that open. So it's good to go. Now I need your help. And by the way, if you want to help with this with petitions, the website is Stop 2020, STOPP 2020, Stop Taxing Our Personal Property. And you can make donations there, and you can, if you're willing to do some petitioning for us, we'd love to have that happen as well. But now what I want you to do is grill me on getting rid of that tax and why we shouldn't get rid of the tax. So if you're ready to do that, I'll get my practice in with you.
Well, Sean is right. He said, I would say, what about the children? I live in Cape Girardeau, Gary, and 80% of our property taxes, both personal and real, go to the local school, to the school board.
Well, you have the opportunity to either put in a sales tax and pay a few more cents on every purchase, or you might tack it on to your real estate tax. Instead of getting one bill in November just before you go out Christmas shopping, you might get 12 smaller bills so that when you're paying your real estate tax, you're paying your personal property tax. In either case, it will cost less in taxes because this is a most inefficient way to collect taxes. So we're not saying you can't have the money. We're just saying you have to open another door.
How are we going to fund the services that the state currently provides through those taxes that they collect on personal property?
Any alternative they want. They can increase the income tax. They can increase a sales tax. They can put it on a property tax, a real property tax. At least it appreciates. You just can't tax my car, farm equipment, farm animals, none of that.
Actually, I don't think the state gets any of it. The state, they do not get a slice of this pie.
Well, doesn't matter. Nobody. The only thing we're saying is you can't tax our personal property anymore.
Speaking as an objection that a voter might have that you need to overcome is, hey, at least with personal property tax, it decreases as my vehicles, et cetera, get older. But if you put it on real property, the taxes are going to increase as they change the assessments. And boy, that's just happening. I know people over in Kansas City, although not in my county.
Actually, your taxes go down. The cost of collecting the personal property tax is pretty high. You have to pay somebody and buy the paper, buy the ink, get the postage, send out the request for information, and you mail it back to them. Then they send you, go through that whole routine again and appraise your property and then send you a bill. Well, if it costs you $4 to collect $10, you need to collect $14 to get the money you want. Well, Once you break that down, that all those costs disappear, they need less money. And there's another downside to the personal property tax, especially if you're somebody who's struggling to make a living, you're just making ends meet. Suddenly in November, they tax your car. You can't make the car tax payment. Next thing you know, you can't renew your license plates. Then the police take your car. Now you can't go to work. Let's get rid of that personal property tax. Let's lower the amount of money they take.
I really like what you're doing here. I think this would be a wonderful idea, and so I do really want to help. That's the nature of my interrogation of you, and I think the bill makes a really good point that I think you might try to work out a better answer to. I think that you do offer a good suggestion that it costs money, and everyone will know that they get those surveys from the county assessor or collector, whoever it is, that they've got to return those, and that does cost money. People will realize that we can save that amount of money. But I do think you need to kind of work out a better response to the fact that, you know, your car tax goes down, but your real estate continues to go up in value, and that is by law required to be reassessed at almost always a higher value every 2 or 4 years.
They're taking less, they need less money to collect what they need. So they're going to take fewer dollars because they're not paying all those costs. And on top of that, they don't reassess. I don't know where you guys live. Where I live, we just got our first tax increase on real estate in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So that tax is lower. It comes out monthly. It's easier to budget. I think it makes much more sense. And people may not want that. I don't have the hubris to tell every district how to supplant that tax. They might just want to add a sales tax where everything you buy is a couple of cents more, but you don't have to budget for it the way you do that personal property tax. And nobody takes your car.
Hang on. Okay.
I'm on the Perry County Board of Trustees for the Health Department, and we get 70% of our budget from this tax. I thought it was a county tax, but it's a state tax. And I'm wondering, how are we going to recoup, you know, that amount of money? It's like $700,000 that we get from.
It's up to the people in your county to decide. Do they want to increase the sales tax to cover that bill? Do they want to increase the real estate tax to cover that bill? Or maybe they don't want to tax to supplant this at all. Maybe what they want to do is combine counties to save money. I don't know if you realize this, but the way we decided how many counties we have in the state of Missouri, and this goes back years and years ago, by horseback, a judge would ride so many hours, and when he got to the whatever hour it was, bingo, you got a new county. The result, we have more counties in the state of Missouri than they do in California, and fewer people, and less real estate. So maybe these counties combine, eliminate some of their hierarchy, and you don't even have to have a tax to supplant this.
Well, what about the interim? We have, you know,
Well, you've
15 people depending on this. I mean, you can't go from.
You've got a year to supplant the tax.
Excuse me?
You've got a year to supplant the tax.
Well, they have to be going at the same time to keep funding and keep your people employed.
No. At the end of the fiscal year, this ends, this begins. You've already got your money from the. This is good.
I did not understand that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, well, when this legislation, until this legislation goes on the books, until it becomes active, you're collecting that personal property tax. So you've got a whole year to find the alternative. Yes.
Thank you. So as you have written it, it would be voted on, assuming it gets to the ballot, it would be voted on in November of 2020.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And when would it take effect?
It would take effect the following year. So you've got that year's worth of revenue.
So the bill that we ordinarily get at the end of the year in December, payable on December 31st.
You're going to get that car. You're going to get that car tax in December, right? And all those taxes are due the end of the year.
Right.
You're not going to be collecting those car taxes until next year. But if we've eliminated the car tax and you've got a whole year, you can supplant that tax with a sales tax long before the car tax would be due.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a little obtuse with this. Can you give me the actual date? So we vote on this in November of 2020, and then the tax.
And on January 2021, the tax is done. By then, you've pretty much collected all the car taxes, because that's usually the date by which it's due. So thereafter, you switch to a sales tax or a real estate tax, and I think you've got plenty of time to do that. Doesn't take long for a county to put it together.
So first off, Mr. Nolan, thank you very much. I was a candidate in 2018, and I did have an opportunity to speak on your show, so thank you for the opportunity to have me there. Not so much a decrement, but possibly an answer to the question that was going back to the funding. If we did elect this or put this in place in November of 2020, the final assessment that would come out, as you said, in December, that could be used as your basis, as you said, to figure out how much you need to increase in either sales or other taxes. So at least they would answer an objection that way. You would know how much to increase the other areas.
Right.
And essentially then by the end of 2021, you would have collected that the same way. So the timing on it, I think, works out very, very well.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more thing. If you've got a local talk station and you want a libertarian voice, tell them to pick up the show. By the way, the ratings on my program were #1, literally the highest rated talk show in Columbia, and beating Rush Limbaugh. And if you want that libertarian message statewide, call your talk station and say, pick up the show, because it's available. Thank you very much. Whatever it is in life that you want, go out and get it. Don't wait for the government to drop it in your lap. You make it happen. Carpe diem.
All right, that's great. We have one more panel, one more item to cover before we break for lunch. It's about a half hour, 40 minutes. It's going to be it's going to be a panel on growing and establishing your county party. This will be run by John Phillips and Cecil Ince. I'm not sure how we're going to mic that, but we have a wireless on the stage, and we have the mic up there. Okay, so you guys, if you could just join us up here. This is then we'll about half hour, 40 minutes from now, we'll break for lunch. That lunch will go from 12:15 to 2 o'clock. During the lunch, we'll hear from Sam Goldstein, and then we'll also have our awards to follow at the very end of lunch. And then at 2 o'clock, we'll start our state committee meeting. So is this I have a couple solutions here. Oh, you have a mic there? And Cecil, let's take this one. Let's take this one. That should work. We got that wireless over there? Yeah. Say a couple words, John.
Test, test.
You know what? Just use this one.
No, don't.
Okay. That doesn't work very well. I got this. You got that.
Are we working? Yeah, there we go. All right. I introduced myself once already, but I'm John Phillips. I'm your regional rep for the LNC. I also chair my county affiliate chapter in the state of Illinois.
I'm Cecil Ince. I'm your 2019 convention coordinator for the Missouri Libertarian Party State Convention. I'm also the Greene County, Missouri Greene County Libertarian Party treasurer. So, if you have any questions, please come up to the podium and in turn, and we will answer your questions. I've helped organize the Greene County Libertarian Party. We went from being unorganized to being organized. We have filed with the Secretary of State's office here in Missouri, and we established a bank account. We've got our committee. Not every seat is filled in the precincts, but we are working on that, and we are growing. For the first time in the Greene County Libertarian Party's history, we will have a booth at our county fair here in Greene County. So.
I started my chapter in 2016. We went quickly from 5 paying members to about 50. I'm also a member of the Affiliate Support Committee for the National Committee, and I work closely with our state director for affiliate development.
All right, so if you have any questions about growing or establishing your party, please bring them to the podium. Do we know everything?
At one time, the National Libertarian Party offered a manual on county organization. Is that available online, and can you point us to it fairly easily?
The resource right now is lpaction.org, but we're actually in the process of revamping that entire what's the website? Well, not the website, but the breadth of material that we have available for that specific topic, including a manual, sample bylaws, rules about things you got to file with the IRS, as far as, for banking purposes and those kinds of things. So we are in the process of redoing all that to be far more comprehensive and far more easier to understand.
And John, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of the narrative on how you went from 5 paying members in Marion County, I think you're in
Macon
Indianapolis.
County. Macon County.
Is that Indianapolis?
No, it's in Illinois. It's
you're Illinois. I'm sorry.
Decatur, Illinois.
Decatur, okay. So 5 to 50.
The simplest was we started with Gary Johnson, and of course people were interested in that. But then it was just community outreach. It was going to events, not necessarily just hosting events, but going to the local, like for instance, the latest one we're doing is the local Black Chamber of Commerce is doing an urban gardens project, and so we've been showing up to help volunteer with that in our T-shirts, and just they just say Libertarian Party, and discussing things with that. Going to, honestly, we go to other party meetings. I go to the Democratic Party of Macon County meetings regularly, and I've attended a few of the Republican Party, and I just talk to them. The other thing is media outreach. If you can do an activity that attracts media attention, then you get interest. If you do, adopting a highway is okay, but everybody does that. But if you do, if you do a food drive, if you do one of our more successful ones this year was when we had the cold snap this winter. We organized a homeless shelter with one of the local churches, and that got us a pretty good influx of at least interest and things like that. So getting things that aren't necessarily, okay, hey, they're not a political event, but they're an event that shows how libertarians do things and the support of consensual interactions, as Alex mentioned earlier, that the media will consider newsworthy, is free publicity that you can get and will definitely help grow your party.
You mentioned something about dues from county members. Did I hear that right, or did I make that up?
I didn't mention anything, but we do. My county does charge dues. We charge $24 a year, $2 a month, and half that for students. To help cover minor expenses like buying yourself a banner to use in parades, things like that. Some counties have websites for their own county chapter, things like that. But we also do offer a free membership. The free membership is, hey, well, you can come, you can volunteer, you can visit, you can say you're a member, but then you're not a voting member.
And let me add on that. When our committee members are not required, we don't require them to pay county dues. They're for holding that position as committeeman or committeewoman for their precinct. They are a voting member of the county committee. But in Greene County, we have a $5 membership, for at least $5 a year. And that is for those who don't serve as committeemen or women, or even myself. I'd put a lot of my own money into the Greene County Libertarian Party. So it would probably depend a lot on the county committee themselves. County committees consist of the committeemen and women of those precincts. And if you end up having a county that is unestablished, where you'd probably start would be right here in your, like Missouri, your state party affiliate. And there you get your delegate to the state committee, and then from there you can appoint a committeeman to fill a vacant seat within your district. And then that's all legal by Missouri state statutes if you're in Missouri. Other states will be different. You'll have to consult your state statutes or your state party's charter or bylaws.
So I know a challenge that a lot of local affiliates have is once you get members, but how to keep them engaged and keep them active so that way they're there the next year and the year after that. So what kind of advice or what kind of strategies have you guys used to keep people engaged and keep people involved?
Go first.
Okay. Well, here in Greene County, we do a street cleanup, and usually it's just me and the chair. And so I understand that question. In fact, I believe in getting involved in certain activities and stuff that's like the county fair, manning a booth, getting volunteers for that. Keep, asking get on your list of your members. Call them, say, hey, we need volunteers. Will you please volunteer to run the booth for a day? And you can have a booth anywhere where they have booths. Not just in a county fair. So we've done art walk here in Springfield a few times. We've done other events in the area, parades, like we're going to be in the 4th of July parade, and we usually do a table there. And so usually activities where there's people, I found that a lot of members will show up for something like that.
We do a lot of parades, and we do some booths, but it goes back to in my earlier talk when I talked about the SMART goals. One of the things about the SMART goals I find is it helps to set a goal that your chapter can see you achieve, because then they say, oh, we did that. So then they feel invested and they feel excited about, oh, we actually accomplished something. And it could be something small. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be, hey, we planted 3 plants today, but then every time they drive past it, they say, oh, hey, we did that. That's the biggest thing to keeping people involved. Obviously, you see a big influx of involvement when there's a candidate that they feel like they can support. Everybody wants to jump in on that. But between election cycles, that's your biggest thing. And so keeping a change of activities and that you are constantly doing, not necessarily time sinks, but just, hey, we got this food drive, let's go do that. Let's, we're all going to come in and we're going to bring 10 cans and we'll take it in. We'll say the Libertarian Party of Macon County donated this. Hey, we're going to go help the urban gardens today. We're just little activities that we can set a little goal that they can see an achievement on, and then move on to the next one, so that there's not boredom, not we're just doing the same thing over and over and over.
Okay, so one comment about that, but I also want to involve Tom here. So it's not fun to do politics, like in the off season. So any ways that we can engage our people in fun stuff, where we can invite new people in and help them understand how they're part of the party, is really important. But I was wondering if Tom could please share what you're working on when it comes to county representation, and then maybe you guys can share some ideas on how to make that a little more successful. Please.
basically, I just sent out a letter to libertarians in unaffiliated counties saying, hey, you're unaffiliated, do you want to do that? And I got back like some responses, and we have one new county that's organized and a couple more that are have people thinking about it. That's basically all that happened there. I don't know. Like, I agree with Ashley what she said about just having events that are fun in the off season. So.
The, one thing I do to help with that is when I hear about a new county that's trying to organize, I go to it. I just say, hey, schedule a meeting, I'll come. And that seems to help them, because then they say, oh, well, you know, not just people in our area are interested, they're bringing in somebody else. If you've got people that are even, you know, as I like to joke, libertarian famous moderately, you can have them come speak to your event. And that tends to bring some people out. Honestly, I like house parties. Kara Schulz talks about doing these for campaign contributions and to build your campaign, but it also works for your chapters. You know, hey, find somebody that's willing to have a few people over to their house, and you can, I don't know, watch a debate on TV, you can watch a football game, you can watch a baseball game, and just have a good time together, and you can just, and chit-chat, and, you know, get to know each other, and, oh, hey, I had this great idea, you can brainstorm a little bit. And those can be fun activities that keep people involved, especially when you know, if Joe comes over to me and says, hey, I've got this really great idea for a tax day protest. I want to burn the tax code in a toilet, which is actually an idea that came up at one of our meetings. And we ended up not being able to do that because we couldn't get a city permit, but it brought a lot of excitement and a lot of fun in the conversation. And then, you know, next month, everybody came back. They're like, hey, let's talk about that some more. Maybe since we can't get a permit to do that, maybe we can do one of those where we charge people $5 to hit the car with a hammer. You know, we'll get a junk car and we'll paint an IRS on it. You know, and so everybody was coming up with ideas, and those kind of brainstorming sessions can be a lot of fun that can get people involved.
And I found that, here in Missouri, after the primary election, during the primary elections, we file for our committeemen and women's seats. And that's when we file at our county clerk or election authority. And then after that, we convene for our county convention. This is where the new committeemen come in and elect the new officers. And we set our calendar and agenda for the year. And we select certain events. This year, we selected 2 main events that we were going to do, which is the 4th of July parade and the county fair. And we also do every year we do a picnic. Now, during off-election years, maybe less attendance. During election years, we have candidates speaking, so we end up with more attendance. So there's a lot of different activities. Standing out on the corner of downtown when they're having an art walk, handing out libertarian literature for those who want it. You know, I don't just hand them to everybody. But, you know, these are things we can do. And these are things we can accomplish, you know, going to a city council meeting, having a presence there. You know, if you're dedicated to liberty and the Libertarian Party, suit up, show up, and if you're the Lone Ranger, you're the only voice at that point that someone's going to hear something. And that person may be the next person standing there with you next year doing the exact same thing. And then we just continue.
The other things you can do, find a way to keep people, keep everybody involved. A lot of times you get a group going and 1 or 2 people just kind of take charge and run with it, and then 3 or 4 other people are sitting there watching them do all the work, and they're kind of, and those 3 or 4 people are the ones that aren't going to come back because they don't feel involved. So make sure you're finding an activity for them. Excuse me, that would be the biggest thing to getting something started, is finding something to keep everybody interested, because not everybody likes to go out sign wave, not everybody likes to work a booth, not everybody likes to, so a variety, you know, keeps people involved.
Oh, and another thing is we do a Liberty meetup, and what that is we meet for lunch once a month. And we just sit around and we have lunch and we talk politics, we talk what's going on. We update people that were not at the committee meeting if they do show up. So there's a lot of different things we can do, and you can toss the ball around with other people in your group or your county committee and come up with better and new ideas. So you can have a great off election year, because there's a lot of stuff going on politically that we could still be a voice of liberty for in those off election years.
I believe we've got a gentleman here for cannabis legalization. You can work with them. You can do outreach with a group like that you can also spread the liberty message, but gives you a goal in an off election year. Okay, hey, we're not looking at a candidate, but this is going before the House and we want to get this passed. How do we help them out? And you can form, that also forms a coalition that will then help when you are running candidates. Any other questions?
I'd like to just touch on one thing real fast. One thing that I have learned that can be done is that if you get to know your state rep or your state senator, and you find a law in your state statutes, you can write a bill yourself, walk it up there and say, hey, you remember me? I have wrote this bill, would you please look it over and consider it? If they don't, walk on down the hall. There's probably someone who will. So.
Another good thing that I found is a letter to the editor campaign. If you've got 4 or 5 people, everybody likes recognition. Everybody likes seeing their name in the paper. And so if you've got 4 or 5 people, you can take turns writing letters to the editor. And like our local paper has a limit, 1 per month. Okay, so if you've got 4 people in your party, or 5 people in your party that are willing to write and can write halfway decently, you can each write a letter. And if you get there 1 a week, you've done pretty well, and you've gotten the message out there, and you've kept them involved and gotten them an opportunity to express their opinion to a wider audience, and go, oh, cool, my name was in the paper. But people don't think about that. People are like, oh, I don't think about writing a letter to the editor until you put it in front of them. And then sometimes it's easier for people, oh, I don't know what to write about. Well, then, hey, this month we're going to do the topic of marijuana legalization. Next month we're going to do the property tax reform, and throw a topic out there at them, and you can organize it, and if you can get a few letters to the editor, even if a lot of these newspapers, when they get inundated with them, if they get multiple letters on the same topic, they're more likely to publish one of them than if they only get 1 letter on that topic.
And realize it takes 10% of the people do 90% of the work. And if that 10% does 90% of the work, the other 80 to 90% will follow along.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We are a little ahead of schedule here, which is going to be fantastic, because it's going to give us about a little over 2 hours for lunch and our speaker and awards. At this moment in time, let's give a big round of applause to Jeff Allender, our sound guy and video guy, getting a Facebook guy. He's doing a great job. Appreciate it, Jeff. So we'll break now, and lunch will be served in this room. So when it gets set up, you can come in here, you can eat in here, or take it out. We have a 2-hour break for lunch. As soon as we've kind of settled down with our eating, Sam will come up. He'll give us a talk for as long as he feels necessary. And we'll have little awards after that. We have little awards after that, and then following Sam, we'll have the state committee meeting. So break for lunch, 2 hours.